Hello and welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are around the world. It's a pleasure to welcome you all back to the Light 'em Up Lounge. And this is going to be a big show. We've been waiting for this for quite a while. I know so many of you were asking us over and over again, when is Steve Saka coming on the show? And today is the day. So I am delighted and honored to welcome Steve Saka from Dunbarton Tobacco Trust here with us at the Light 'em Up Lounge. As always, if you have any questions, and I'm sure there'll be plenty, for those of you watching on Facebook, please make sure that you put your questions underneath the live stream. I'm watching, I'm checking, and we'll make sure to forward all your questions to Mr. Saka. And for all of you here at the lounge with us, you know the spiel. Make yourselves heard. Please put your questions into the chat box, raise your hand. We would love to hear them all. So without further ado, welcome, Steve Saka. Thank you for being here with us.
Woohoo.
Good start.
I don't even know. I do so many of these. It blows me away that anybody still actually wants me to come on their podcast and actually still wants me to talk. It's like, and look, deeply honored. Thank you very much. But are you guys not sick of me yet? I'm sick of me. How can you not be sick of me? How can people actually want to watch yet another podcast with my fat head on it? It befuddles me. I feel like I'm in Fast and Furious number 863. Like that's where it feels like we are. So,
and then everybody's probably asking you the same questions over and over again, right? Why is
of course
sweet tip or not? Like,
I mean,
we'll stay away from that stuff.
I mean, I would love for just any question at all that I hadn't heard before would be like a miracle. But even just one I haven't answered 10 times would be like a godsend. I really don't know. I don't know. And I see my friend Jose Blanco in here, and he's like a pro at this, right? He's all suave, and he's got the whole thing, and yada yada yada, and he's camera attractive.
Steve Saka, let me tell you something. I would not miss this. And I've seen a lot of your interviews. I would not miss that. I don't care what you say. So we love you. Just leave it at that.
So let's get to the bloodbath. Let's do this.
At least, Mr. Saka, you get credit for probably the most ingenious way of reposting our invite that we shared on Facebook. So credit to you for that. I hope you still feel okay doing the show with us, but let's get right to it and go through a couple of questions that probably you haven't answered before. Anyways, let's start with this. What do you think was the most important piece of content that you had put on Cigar Nexus way back before the thing Cigar Blogger even existed?
All right, most important content. I think probably the most, obviously the content that made the most impact was not when I revealed the box codes for the Cuban boxes, but when I revealed the box codes like a month later after the Cubans changed all the box codes so nobody knew what the new box codes were. And I think it was like within, I don't even know if it was a month, it might have been 2 or 3 weeks only. And I had said, okay, let me just share all the new box codes with the rest of the world. That was probably the most impactful piece of content. I noticed it got Habanos to pay attention. And made them kind of rather upset that they had come up with this new ingenious system that I managed to ruin within like 3 weeks. And then someone from there actually begged me not to ruin the next ones. And I was just kind of like, okay, no big deal, I won't. So but I knew the answer to the next ones also. But I didn't want them to trace back who my source was. So I figured they may have like put some like ringers in the information in that next go around. where something wasn't quite right and they shared this one with that person. So I never published the next set because I didn't want my person, let's make it genderless, person. I didn't want that person to get caught in Cuba for sharing that information. So that was probably the most impactful. I think the thing that had the greatest value on there, it's tough. Look, there was a lot of good content on that. I mean, I think that people today don't understand what an information desert we were living in back in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s when it came to cigars. So, I mean, there was a really good thing about how to store cigars that was much more sensible than what most people wrote. There was a really good anti-counterfeiting or a way for you to identify Cuban cigars was probably the most detailed thing ever written about that. But all of those things that were written somewhat 25, now is it, good God, it's almost 30 years ago. They're all out of date. I mean, there's still some gems to be gleaned from that information, but there's nothing that I wrote then that would need a complete overhaul, to really make it today with all we understand today, and also all of what I understand today too. I mean, I wrote a lot of things, 25, 30 years ago that I thought were correct that I have now learned I was just part of spreading the mistruths. And then I think the other thing that really came out of Cigar Nexus that I think was interesting, which sadly never went anywhere, was actually an honest rating system. One where good cigars were called for being good cigars and great cigars were called for being great cigars, and mediocre were mediocre and sucky ones were just sucky ones. And we did a really good job of that, I think, on Cigar Nexus. And, part of it was because we had 3 blind reviewers every time, and you got their notes just directly by what their notes were. And then you got my summation, and I just didn't give a fuck because, and I apologize for the language, but I just didn't, because I didn't have any advertisers. I didn't have nobody in the business was somebody that I was doing business with. So it was one of the few places that you could actually go get, I can't say you could get a correct opinion, because opinions are like opinions, right? We all know that. But what you were getting is you were getting a sincere opinion about what I actually thought about the cigars. And you really can't get that anywhere anymore, sadly. There's some sites that are better and there's some reviewers that are better, but everything has its own inherent bias. And it's not that I didn't have my inherent biases too, but I was, they were a little less so then. Now, if I was to try to do something like that today, it would be a disaster. I couldn't do an honest job of it now. What am I going to do? Say that my friend's cigar that he makes tastes like a dog turd? Am I going to say that this factory has been slipping in quality for the last 3 years? Am I going to say, how the fuck can these people not figure out how to make not a tight cigar? They've been making tight cigars for 4 years straight. You think somebody in that building would finally figure out how to make a cigar that doesn't make it feel like I'm sucking through a milkshake straw from the moment they hand it to me? No, I can't say those truths anymore, because I'm in the business at this point. I think that's the thing that I think what everybody should hope for. If I was in the cigar industry, what everyone should hope for is that I never get bought out. If I get bought out next time and I decide that I still want to play on the internet, it won't be good. So nobody should ever buy me out again.
Help me understand. And I'm really curious from personal perspective, why sharing all that in the first place? I mean, I know when you say back in those days, it was an information desert. I get it. Today, we live through the exact opposite, where everybody has a voice and we all feel entitled to share our bullshit with the entire world through the means of social media. But why even share that in the first place? Did you enjoy the spotlight? Was it sort of an obligation that you felt to put things into perspective and put them out the way they were?
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, first off, I was always the uber cigar geek guy. I've been that way since the late 80s. I was the guy that they pointed to when you came to the store was, oh, well, that's the guy to ask the question, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
So I didn't know any other cigar smokers like myself that were like just crazy into it, right? That like just wanted to know everything, talk to everybody they could, find out as much. People just, is it big? Is it small? Is it dark? Is it light? Is it mild? Is it strong? How much does it cost? I mean, these were the questions that most consumers were asking themselves in the late 80s. And honestly, it's still the same questions that a lot are still even asking today. But audiences today consumers are way more informed now. So that was the first part. What ended up happening is I then discovered that through Usenet news groups that there was like 20 other just whack jobs out there in the universe that were like me about cigars. And it was just kind of like being the kid with two heads that's never seen another kid with two heads. And all of a sudden you find this group of kids with two heads. I mean, it was kind of liberating, to be honest with you. It's like, my God, there's other people out there that are just as whacked out about cigars as I am, and started communicating. And it was through what essentially was the equivalent of Reddit of its time. It was, today, I don't think Usenet is used for much of anything except for like probably child porn and probably like downloading stripped movies. I don't know what else it would be used for because it's a completely archaic method of communication. But at that time, there was little quilting groups and people that were into bass fishing and people that were into whatever. And I happened into this little group and I was one of the original people. And I also, as you can tell, I have no problem talking, and I also have no problem writing. So when you talk a lot and you write a lot, particularly in a medium that writing is the key, you kind of quasi become popular. So I would be a liar to say that when I started Cigar Nexus, it was out of the goodness of my heart. It wasn't. I mean, it was two basic things. Number one, I was spending a lot of money every year on cigars, somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 in relation to my cigar consumption and my cigar related travels. And I had a good friend that was spending even more than that. And we kind of concocted this scheme that if we started this cigar website, we could use it as a way to tax shelter our cigar expenses off. So that was number one. And number two, yeah, I'll admit, it was a little enticing to kind of become a quasi little mini celebrity. Like I'm human nature. I mean, I was doing events for 300 plus people back in the 90s. If you ask Carlito Fuente, he gave me the very first Opus X's ever made for me to give away to my group of internet geeks. Okay. For one of my boondoggle events. I mean, it was kind of, and the other thing too, is it allowed me access to everybody, that all the people that is in my geek part that I wanted to talk to, I got to meet them and talk to them, and I had a reason to talk to them. And remember, this was before there were other websites. It's before there were bloggers. It was way before we even thought about doing video and YouTube. I mean, it was kind of weird what I was doing. I mean, I was writing what's now become the staple, everybody writing about the trade show every year and all the cigars released. I was doing that back in 1996. And yeah, so tax shelter, but I never had any intention for it to become into a money maker, because once the accountant told us that we had lost so much money in the first 3 years that we couldn't keep writing off losses in the fourth year without it becoming a problem with the IRS, we decided to stop. So I never had any interest in becoming a full-time advertising blogger. And you know what? To be honest with you, maybe I made a mistake, because I was so far ahead of everybody. Had I stayed on that track, I think that we would have done really well. But maybe we wouldn't have, because part of also what made Cigar Nexus so appealing was the fact that it was such an independent island that I didn't have to worry about what I said. I could say stuff, and it's the type of stuff that you simply can't say now. It's just impossible. And I mean, look, some of the stuff that I said back then, I mean, it's the reason why none of my cigars have ever been rated in Cigar Aficionado magazine, nor probably will they ever be, is because of something I wrote about Cigar Aficionado back in 1996 on this little Mickey Mouse website, you know, and it has literally had a follow-on impact in my career for 3 decades since. I mean, that is what telling the truth gets you. It gets you in a position that isn't necessarily always the best for your business.
Still, you can't help but doing so, speaking the truth and speaking from the heart.
Now, I think the one thing is, as much as I admit I liked the cigar celebrity of it at the time, I don't know when it was. I think it was maybe what, 2005-ish, 2007. I've come to realize that none of that means, you know what, not even that. It was really earlier than that. It was while I was with Lou. It's probably like 2002, 2003. I had come to the conclusion that cigar celebrity is really pretty worthless. It really, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't mean anything. You know, it works to a certain level. It helps you when you're tiny. But ultimately, there's always some other cigar celebrity that's got better tits than you and is prettier and is newer and fresher. And that group of consumers is ultimately going to move on to it. So I kind of got to the point where that part kind of faded for me, the bloom off the rose. But I had already stopped Cigar Nexus. We stopped Cigar Nexus in, I don't know, 1998-ish, right when the boom ended, 99. Right. It was right whenever the accountant said we weren't going to be able to keep writing our stuff off, and then it was kind of like pointless.
With business and life in general, do you usually have a master plan and then follow all the steps that you set out for yourself? Or is it more like a natural evolution and letting things flow the way they flow?
So my getting into the cigar business was very organic. My getting my first job with Lou Rothman, where I actually earned a paycheck, was organic. What I did when I was with Lou was not organic at all. That there was a definite plan as to what I wanted to accomplish and how I wanted to get there. And I was lucky enough to work with someone that trusted me to let me kind of do what I wanted to do. And it was kind of the same thing when when Altadis bought JR out and I decided to move along, that I didn't want to be an Altadis employee. And let me be completely frank, I don't think they wanted me to be an Altadis employee either. So had I not moved on, I think they would have moved me on, because I just wasn't really, we're just not a good fit for one another at the time. So my going to Drew Estate again was kind of organic. It was not any sort of master plan. But when I got to Drew Estate, it then became a pretty quickly, there had to become a plan, because Drew Estate, when I got there, was a very inventive, energetic company that was really just completely rudderless and sinking. And it required a real focus as to, what are we going to do branding wise? What are we going to do business wise? What are we going to do factory wise? What are we going to do tobacco wise? I mean, at every level, Drew Estate needed help. So organic to get there, but once there, very distinct idea. Now, when I chose to leave Drew Estate some 8 years later, and in that case, it was different. I chose to leave. They really didn't want to get rid of me. I don't want to say they begged me to stay, because it's not like they're on fallen knees, for God's sakes, but they really wanted me to stay. But it was just time for me to go for a wide variety of reasons. And this go around, when I left there, I already knew that I was going to start a new company. I didn't know what the name of that new company was going to be. I knew what I kind of wanted to do cigar wise though. And I have a very detailed vision of where I want this company to go. I mean, this is not, the brands I'm releasing are not willy-nilly. They're well thought out. the purpose of the brands are well thought out. Who the consumers for the brands are is well thought out. Everything has a purpose and a position. And now, am I hitting everything flawlessly? No, I'm not. I've had a couple hiccups along the way but I've also had some extra wins along the way that I didn't think I would get either. But yeah, this go around right now. This is a very very well organized and coordinated strategy that I have that has nothing to do with last year or this year or next year, but literally 10, 15, 20 years into the future. That is the way I'm thinking right now.
And is the persona Steve Saka part of that strategic thinking, or has it been from the beginning? Because you've built almost a cult around your person, or probably not you yourself, but your followership and the people that worship your every word and comment on Facebook and stuff. Was that built on purpose?
Well, I mean, it's not built on purpose, but here's what it is. We as consumers are just perpetually lied to and advertised to. It's just nonstop. Everything that we get is so packaged and so focus grouped that somebody like me, I mean, I just end up ringing more authentic. I end up ringing more true. For all of the ugliness that it sometimes is. And that's something that I think today's consumers, they gravitate towards. And I got to tell you, I know as much as people like to bag on millennials, these people's bullshit meter is just way better off than my current generation. I mean, they research everything, they look into everything, and they're really good at telling what feels true and what doesn't feel true. And people are searching for more authenticity. In fact, I mean, companies spend tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars with branding agencies to try to make them seem more authentic, right? They hire spokesmen to make them seem authentic. They get everything they do is to seem more authentic because that's what consumers want. Well, what I'm saying that consumers in our day and age have been so advertised to that you can't manufacture authenticity. It only goes so far. And when you're somebody like myself, the authenticity part just kind of comes with the package. And look, and it's not something that's really helped me in my career, to be honest with you. I mean, it's what soured my relationship with Cigar Aficionado. It's the reason why when I was up for one of the top level executive jobs at BAT, I sat in the finalist box for like 6 months until I finally withdrew my name because they knew I was the right guy, but they just didn't know, how can we have this guy be the guy? Look at him. He's fat and he's schlubby and he's a redneck and he says the F word every third word. And he never knows when not to talk. I mean, he says the good and he says the bad. I mean, Jose Blanco will attest to this. Did we not have an awfully ugly conversation in public, in a steakhouse, in Managua, that just really should not have ever happened where it happened?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, and I mean, and that ugly conversation that I couldn't hold back, and I had to have at the moment, is just the way I operate with everything and everyone. And that gets you ahead in some ways, but it also puts you behind in other ways, and I've embraced it because for me, look, I enlisted at 17. I am not an educated man. Everything that I have gotten through life has been through grinding and hustling and working and trying to outthink the people that are way better educated and probably smarter than myself. And so I know that this kind of bulldog approach has been what has taken me out of that situation to, owning a company, selling it, being part of a company and being part of the buyout, being president of a company and being part of the buyout, and now being in this little company and it growing way faster than I control. So while everybody tells me I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to do that, I just kind of say, look, I just do what I do and it's been working for me. Now, eventually, will it not work for me? Yeah, it eventually won't work for me. I know that right now, there are probably 3 president, 3 CEO jobs that those companies should can the guy that they have in charge because they're morons and they should put me in that position and I would make them some real fucking money and they could stop screwing around. But the reality is they never will, because my just even saying that out loud is not how you play the game to get those jobs.
Plus, you would probably hate it yourself.
Maybe. I mean, maybe I would hate it myself. But also, look, there would be a lot of joy into taking some of these things that are heading the direction they're heading and turning them around. I mean, in my heart, there's a lot of brands that I love. I hate to see the direction of some of the big companies and the way they're going today, and they're just becoming heartless and soulless, and consumers are treated as numbers and wallets and average ring per customer and how many turns and how many times can I get them to bite them. I mean, it's like they've almost completely missed the point. But the truth of the matter is they haven't missed the point at all. That's how you make more money. Mm-hmm. Everything that they're doing is extracting more dollars out of consumer pockets, and they're becoming bigger. And the people out there in the wilderness like myself, I'm going to lose this game. They are going to win. It's just a question of when. And I don't even know how what I would consider to be the large family companies, the Fuentes and the Padrones, I don't even believe that there's a future for them long term. As long as government continues to work hand in hand with these mega corporations, they are eventually going to squeeze out those multi-generational family businesses that are well established, because even they are not going to be able to fight the battle long term. And so, I mean, for me, I think the writing's on the wall for me right now. I already know it. I'm living on borrowed time. For people like the Fuentes and the Padrones and whoever else we want to throw in that category, they're living on borrowed time too. But they're probably going to get another couple generations out of it before they get squashed. But if we keep going the path that we're going down now, there's nothing about the handmade cigar business that fits into the boxes that these government agencies want to put us all in. And there's nothing that allows for the tax consumption that they want to take from it, because the actual consumption of the product is simply too small. The money is not there to steal. You know what I mean? It really genuinely is a little tiny business when you think about it in just not even global terms, but in just in just regular within your own country terms. These are not mega businesses. I mean, in our business, if a company is doing more than $100 million in handmade premium cigars, they are a mega corporation in our world. That is what they are. Okay. It is not this type of thing where, I mean, the vast majority of the cigar companies, they're doing less than $20 million US in sales, and way more than that. They're even doing less than 4 and 5 million. You know, it really is a small industry made up of a lot of small players. And there's just nothing in the current cards that gives me any confidence that we just won't be regulated, complied out of, paperwork shellacked out of the ability to do what we do. And that's kind of a depressing thing to say out loud, isn't it? I mean, that I'm basically saying I'm in a business that I know is going to ultimately fail, even if I do everything perfect.
With that in mind, how do you feel about it? Is it where you just came to that realization, but then you can't help but still follow that path and be the disruptor that you are? Or is it also where you feel like helpless in a way that, you know,
I mean, it's
not
kind
in our
of
hands anyways?
I mean, kind of where it is for me is, look, so when I decided to start again, I was 50, right? I'm 56 now. I'm super fat. I'm not fat. I'm morbidly obese. Let's not kid anyone. I'm lucky that I have no health problems that I'm aware of. But let's get real. I'm not living into my mid 80s. Okay. I don't have it's very unlikely that I'm going to enjoy that super long lifespan. It's a question of, well, what am I going to do for the next 20 years? I mean, I got bought out. Great. I got enough money in the bank. Great. But do you want to just sit around and do absolutely nothing for 20 plus years? And won't I just die sooner if I do that? I mean, and the other thing too is, what's really weird. So I used to always just think I was a workaholic, and, having been bought out 3 times and each time having a non-compete, I've had this experience 3 times where I couldn't go and get another job. I had to wait. And what I kind of learned in the third go around was, yeah, the workaholic part's true, but that's not really what it is. I almost thrive on the chaos. I thrive on the misery. The more miserable I am, the smarter, the sharper, the brighter I feel. The more I have to complain and bitch and piss and moan and be sour and curmudgeon-y and upset, actually makes me happier. It makes me smarter. It makes me more aggressive. It makes me feel more alive. It is such a sick, twisted thing that it's just impossible to even understand. And I don't understand it, but I've come to the realization that for me, it's true. And I'm sure I could earn some psychoanalyst chick at least a couple grand a week if I started trying to figure out why I feel this way. But I'm not so sure I care that I feel this way. I just understand that I do.
Do you ever think about, could Dunbarton become a legacy brand or a generational brand further down the road?
I love the fact that you use those words, because those are words that I started using a while back and I had never heard anyone say it before I said it. So what that means is that those words are now starting to circulate around. And that's kind of cool. The goal has always been, look, it's to make cigars in a bubble. Anybody can make 5,000 great cigars. It's easy. The question is, can you make cigars consistent long-term that are actually worth smoking? That's where the challenge comes in. And can you make greatness long-term? That's an even much more immense challenge. And then the challenge beyond that is, can you make something that consumers are willing to continually buy long enough that it can become what I call multi-generational, where you're smoking it and then potentially your son or your daughter would be smoking it some 20 odd years later. And in a culture which is just on brand ADH all the time, that has become, it's always been a difficult task, a near impossible task. But in today's environment, it's like beyond difficult to actually make that occur. So what typically happens in our industry is most brands have a 1-year life cycle. They have their launch year and they just sell a lot of it because it's new and people are willing to sample it. But guess what? Next year, there'll be 500 other new girls in the room for you to kiss and your brand gets lost. The question is, can it survive that 2nd year dip? And then in the 3rd year, is it even on the shelves long enough to be there for the 3rd year? And I think if most cigar brand owners and companies were honest with you, most of them really have a sell-through of about 18 months at most. And what ends up on the shelf is just the legacy crap that the retailer hasn't been able to push off yet. But they typically have moved on to something else. The question is, when you hit that 3rd year, if you're still there, do you have the ability, do you start to see that to trend upwards and actually get some real traction where customers are like, you know what, that Sober Mesa that I smoked 2 years ago, I remember it being pretty good. Let me try another one. Let me go back to it. Let me see what it is. You know what I mean? Because they're kissing all these girls along the way and they really forget what's good or bad. And the other thing I would argue is, because of the way we smoke today, constantly swapping brands, we actually become far less familiar with what a brand is even supposed to taste like, because we don't even have enough experiences with it. Where, back in the day, the guy that smoked brand X in this size, he knew exactly what it was supposed to be. And when it wasn't right, he would say, hey, what did you do to my cigar? You screwed it up. I've been smoking this cigar for the last 8 years. I know exactly what this is supposed to taste like. And this shit you're putting in a box don't taste nothing like what I've been buying for 8 years. Today's consumers, they're completely clueless. They can't even compare a cigar from 3 months ago to a cigar they smoke today, because they have literally smoked 30 other blends from point A to point B. It's become such a wildly different world. So trying to get something to catch as a legacy brand, a potential legacy is a different story. Legacy is Monte Cristo territory, Romeo and Julieta territory, right? But just multi-generational, man, that is a lift and a half. But let me say this, it will happen. There are some brand out there right now made by some company that is being smoked by 30 to 45-year-olds as they're kissing all the girls, that they are eventually going to adopt. And it's going to become their Fuente, and it's going to become their Padron, and it's going to become their whatever, so that when they're 55 and 60 and they're in their best money years, they're just going to come to the counter with that box of cigars and plop that box of Sin Compromiso down and not care that it costs $480 and not care about tasting anything else in the room. And that's what you're striving for. You're striving to try to have one of your brands get to that point that it actually becomes somebody's cigar that they will buy all the time. Yeah, they're going to little here, little there, but you know it is with the Padron guys. I mean, you know how it is with the Opus X guys. Okay, they'll try some other stuff, but they're not really interested. That they found, and look, it's the same thing with me. I'm 56. If I never have another small batch bourbon in my life, thank God, I don't need any more of this crap. There's enough good bourbon and enough good scotch that I can basically spend the rest of my life drunk without having to drink some new ass name shit that I've never heard of from somebody supposedly that's better than the other person. And oddly enough, when I say that, that's counterintuitive, because I'm actually the guy that's right now down in the phase of being kissed, right? So I would want to do everything that I could possibly encourage people to try all of these different things. But guess what? I don't have to, because that's what 30 to 45-year-olds do. They do it naturally. And
now,
and
this is where it gets interesting for me. And what I would love to ask you is the what's new question is something everybody talks about, right? And probably retailers face it on a daily basis when the guy walking in is like, what's the next big thing? Do you think that's just an evolution of time where today's consumer is just focused on, I always need something new? Or is it because there's just too few of those brands that truly stick, where you feel like this is where I want to go back to, and you just feel disappointed by everything that's out there, so you're always hunting, you always have to look for something new?
So there's a combination of things, in my opinion, that are at work. First off, the guys that go to the counter and they take their box of Fuente 858 and they just smoke it and they're happy, they've already decided. They don't care about what's new. Same thing with the Padron guys, same thing with the Opus guys, same thing with the Oliva V guys. The what's new part is for the consumer group that's always looking for what's new. It's a very easy sale as a company. It's a very easy sale as a retailer. And it's actually what this consumer wants. This consumer is looking for a wide range of experiences. But ultimately, that consumer is going to hit a point. Typically, it's around 50. Sometimes it's a little earlier. Sometimes it's a little later, where they kind of like get to the point where they decide, I know what I like. Like, I know that, like, when I meet somebody and they're like Cuban, some of them, I think it's just because of snobbery. Others is because I think, yeah, they just really like the Cuban profile. They like the way those cigars smoke. They prefer the tighter draw. They prefer the floral aroma. They prefer the fact that they're milder. This is a style of cigar that they have settled on, that they enjoy. So I think eventually the what's new thing wears thin, because eventually consumers are going to get to a point where they're going to make a choice. And my job on my end is to try to make sure that something stays in the marketplace long enough that it actually has a shot at potentially becoming something that a consumer can adopt long enough. And the other thing that I have to do is I have to really struggle to make sure that I'm not living on the what's new. Because when you're living on the what's new, eventually nobody's going to care what your next what new is. Because these same consumers that are doing all these girl kissings, they will also be tired of just kissing any of your girls that you put into the arena. And you see that countless brands. And again, this is the difficulty between being what I do now versus what I did with Cigar Nexus. When I was with Cigar Nexus, I could just rattle off to you 4 or 5 brands that I believe are totally on the wrong path, are completely failing. They had a period where they were really buzzworthy and they had an opportunity to take the next leap. And instead of becoming more buzzworthy, they just ended up releasing a whole bunch of new stuff that all fell flat, that they now almost become dismissed. And it really doesn't matter what they do next new. And that's why you can't survive on just the what's new. There has to be something more to it. And look, and it's the same thing when I see a brand and I can always look at a brand and I can tell you that whether it's going to be an absolute utter failure, but I can't tell you whether it'll be a long-term success. I can tell you whether it's going to be a failure. I can tell you whether it's going to be a short-term success, but I can't tell anything that is going to be a long-term success. Now, can I tell you this has the potential to be a long-term success? I can tell you it has the potential to be a long-term success. But ultimately, these are things that are really out of my control. Consumers in the long run get to dictate what wins and what loses. What I get to do is I get to try to make a good product so it has a chance at winning. I try to make a good brand around it so there's no reason that it prevents the consumer from wanting it to win. And I can tell the story of what it is, but ultimately in the end, consumers are the ones that dictate the winners and losers. I mean, Liga Privada became so wildly successful because at the end of year 3, consumers just decided to make it a super uber hot cigar. It wasn't that cigar didn't taste just as good in year 1. Okay, but it basically got ignored for about 3 years before all of a sudden, bam, it became uber hot. And even when it was its hottest, when I was at Drew Estate, it wasn't, I think the biggest sales of Liga are like, when I left, I think right now they're literally 6 to 7 times more than when I was there, when it was at its hottest. And the reason why is they were able to take that hotness and figure out how to migrate it to the next generation of consumers that isn't the buzz group. Because the buzz group that used to be so infatuated with Liga Privada when I was there, truth is most of those guys have moved on. Yeah, they still occasionally smoke Ligas, but that group has found something else that's currently the hot thing for them. And look, and some of my products are it, which I am the beneficiary of, and thank you very much. But I also know that I'm not keeping these consumers. The best I can keep them for is maybe 3-4 years, and then they're going to go to someplace else. So the question is, while I'm in this phase, how do I get the average person that doesn't know who Dunbarton is, doesn't know who Steve Saka is, doesn't care about the pedigree, and ultimately never will, never wants to, doesn't give a flip. How do I get that guy to smoke a Sobremesa Brulee? How do I get that guy to try a Mi Querida or an Umbagog or a Sin Compromiso? How do I make that happen, that I have a chance at that person? Because I'm losing the guys that are making me buzzy and hot. I'm not keeping them. I wish I could say I would. I'd love to think I could, but I'm not delusional. You're going to lose most of them. You have some, but you're going to lose most of them.
Is that where you try to sort of sprinkle in things like using Comstock, using certain processes like
Right.
Compromiso, where you bring something new to the table,
So
disrupt?
you're asking a really intelligent question. And again, if I were my competitor, I would listen to every podcast I did. Because in every podcast I do, I basically explain my business strategy when I'm asked a question. Problem with most small companies is they use all of those limited production, limited editions as cash crutches because it's easy money. You make 500 boxes of something for someone, it's super hot and it sells out. I don't use them like that at all. I use them completely as marketing tools. I make no money on any of these limiteds. I put way too much effort, way too much work in it, where most people, they just make something, they already make a couple ring gauges bigger, they cut a 1/2 inch off, they change the wrapper, they give it some funky little pigtail nonsense, just anything to make some easy, quick cash. And the way I look at it is, my guy who's a super Dunbarton fan, I want to give him something that is new and fresh for him. So I keep him in the Dunbarton family. At the same time, though, I don't want to end up relying on this becoming a cash crutch. At the same time, I also understand that in order for this to be effective, I have to give that consumer something that's really unique and different and better. Better is relative, but something that's worth the trip. You know, that if this guy who normally buys from retailer A is now going to go out of his way and chase a box from retailer B of a cigar that he's never smoked before, never tried before, he's buying that completely on blind faith, right? I mean, and I don't sell that stuff for low bucks. I mean, those cigars are almost always like $15 a piece. So there's like no steal here that it's like a good bargain. No, you're paying real money for a real cigar in America. So I actually have to do well. They have to be exceptional. U-boats have to be amazing. Red meat lovers have to be amazing. The Owl Shop 75th has to be amazing, because I know that my guy is going out of his way to buy something that he's never tasted from someone who he would never do business with. So for me, I put so much effort into them that I rarely make any money. Most times I lose money. In fact, red meat lovers this year will be the first one that I make money on, because the quantity is to the point that it's that large. For me, it's entirely a marketing effort. And if I fail, it's dismal. And it also has a lot to do with why I pick and choose who I tend to do them with. Like right now, I have Owl Shop 75th with Zach. I would never do one with Zach. I love you, Zach. You're my friend, but you suck. You have no marketing reach whatsoever. He never has. He never will. It's not in his personality. It's just, but for me, it's an old school shop that's 3 generations, been in the same shitty location. I have a personal affinity for it. So I go ahead and I decide to do this to help Zach out, right? For Zach, I know it's going to be some decent money, but really for me, that wasn't a good project to do. Whereas when I do one with like Ronnie at Secreto, Ronnie's like a chihuahua. He's so damn annoying. I mean, he'll bark and bark and yip and yip and yap and yap. I mean, I get endless marketing out of Ronnie. Okay. So Ronnie's a perfect guy to do that project with. The guys at Rockies, they make special videos. They do this whole thing. They stretch it out for months. These are the things that I'm interested in, not me figuring out how to sell an extra 500 boxes of cigars, because look, this year we will have sold 1 million cigars. I hope by the time we get to the end of the year, we would have produced 1.4 million cigars. Next year, I'm currently on program to produce somewhere between 1.8 and 2 million cigars. 5,000 cigars do not make a difference, right? But they sure do make a difference if they suck. If those 5,000 cigars aren't right, think of what at risk that is over 5,000 crummy cigars that you're taking. So I always look at those projects as marketing projects, but I have to come through. I have to deliver, because if I don't deliver, I'm really just hurting myself doing it.
Is there a sweet spot where you feel like you can go this far and still provide the utmost quality, and everything beyond that point is just doing the opposite of what you have in your brand claims, without compromise? And beyond that point is actually when you have to compromise.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a certain point. I'll tell you when you hit it. It's when you have so many employees that are relying on the brand that you as a steward of your company can't cut it, because you know that means you're cutting people out of their jobs. And look, let me say this. When I was at Drew Estate, and we decided not to sell any T52s for an entire year because the crop wasn't quite ready. We've been fermenting it. Was it like 90% there? Yeah. Could we have used it? Yeah. But we could make the decision to not use it. Why? Because the brand was worth $3 million in an $80 million company. The fact that we'd lose out on $1 million worth of sales for that year, what was it going to change, right? But when a brand becomes a $20 million brand, and now that $20 million supports 300 families, that's not an easy decision to make as an executive, to say, hey, I'm going to hold true to my core and I'm not going to put out anything. You know what I mean? Because now you're really touching people's lives. And so, yeah, there is a certain point where it almost becomes impossible to live by that mantra. You know, it becomes really, really difficult. Luckily, we're not there. I don't have any grand aspirations for Dunbarton. I mean, I don't want to intentionally limit its growth, but we've been letting it grow organically. I think we can stay on track for, I think we can have a small, young, healthy company. And if the regulatory environment allows me to operate, I would be very happy just to stay in that spot. But yes, eventually, and it's like with everything, I don't even care what it is. There's a limit as to how many of any cigar you can make the right quality. Now, eventually, there's not enough tobacco to make Romeo and Juliet at Churchill's. They just don't currently hit that level yet, right? But there is a point where you can't. Look, I'm at that point on Todos Las Dias. I've been debating about whether to, discontinue Todos Las Dias because it was my slowest seller. It's only been growing like 17 to 22% on average compared to all my other brands. Well, guess what? The decision's been made for me. I haven't made a public press release about it, but one of the particular filler tobaccos, it came out of the Pologne's terrible. It's awful. It tastes like shit. It's unusable. I might be able to easily scrape together 10% of what I was hoping to get. Well, it's not enough to maintain the brand. So guess what? Todos Las Dias is going to go on hiatus. Not closing it out, not giving it away, not killing it, but it's got to go on hiatus because I don't have the tobacco to make it. Well, it's easy to make that decision about your slowest selling brand now, isn't it? And it's one of the reasons why, for me, the more diversity I have makes things a little less likely for me to have to feel as obligated to one. And also the other thing that what we do is the price structure on everything is the same. So I make the same from a business perspective. The P&L is identical on an Umbagog as it is on a Sin Compromiso. So I don't have any more incentive to sell more Sins than I do to sell more Umbagogs from just a sheer business point of view. And I like it that way, because then they're all my children. They all have their own equal opportunities. Look, I'd be lying to tell you I don't like some of them better. It's true in my real life too. Look, there's I like my one son better than my other son. Depending on the day, it seems to flip and flop on my mood. But the point is, it's the same thing with the cigars. So by taking the financial part out of it, making the financial part equivalently equal, I don't have a financial factor that's driving me to make one a success over the other. I just keep trying to do what I think is necessary to help that individual brand along, hoping that it might potentially get to the side of becoming a generational brand. But to get back to your original question, I think too many companies rely on these limited productions and limited editions as a way to generate cash. And that basically, in my opinion, is the road to ruination, because eventually you just burn that customer out and you don't put the effort necessary to actually make them something special. And once they're on their 8th or 9th purchase because they love you as a company and they've been underwhelmed by 6 of the 9, you really just lose that guy. And so I really think that the way those products should be used is they should be used in a manner to bolster the company, bolster the image of the company, bolster the image of the maker, bolster the image of the brand that you're trying to bolster. I think a lot of people use them ineffectively. And almost always, it's the small and mid-sized companies that make the mistake. The larger companies tend to be a little brighter. Why? Well, because they've learned over the years that that's what they're for. And the small guys, they're scrambling for cash. If they can get 500 boxes of something sold and pocket 40K and go on to the next thing, they're ecstatic. But every time I look at every one of them as just a chance to just fail. Every limited production, every limited release to me is just an opportunity for failure. That's what they are.
Question from Ian.
Steve, hi, good to see you. I've been looking forward to this. Hope you're well. I was actually with Mitchell Orchard yesterday, and he even has Noah's Mill bourbon in his new shop. So I hope you can come over to England and have some with me.
Yeah, but I'll never come to Mitchell's shop because he does not have Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust cigars in his shop. So fuck Mitchell.
Yeah, he says yours are too big and therefore too expensive for the UK market, but that's another thing. I mean, I have to say, I love your cigars. I love the Sobremesa. If I had to be on a desert island with one cigar, I'd probably take the Sobremesa because it's just a brilliant cigar. I love it. I've only had one Sin Compromiso, courtesy of John at the festival, and I love that too, but I haven't had enough of those to know. I would just encourage you, your company's doing well. People love your cigars. You've got loads of fans. You could have more, I think, in Europe. I know the Americans are very, fickle. They want something new, something new, something new. I want a good cigar every time. I love the Leva Serie V. I go back to them. I love them. I like the Sobremesa. I want to go back to them and know it's the same cigar. So please keep doing what you're doing because you've got a lot of fans out there who really love what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, Ian. I will say the international market for me is a bit of a black hole. I don't have the capacity to deal with the US market. I mean, right now, I don't know the exact number, but we're more than a couple million behind in back orders for my US market.
Wow.
And we stopped opening new accounts last August, but then we opened it up for the trade show this year. And we also took care of the accounts that were on the waiting list from last August until the trade show. Then at the trade show, we opened it up for the 4 days for the retailers that were there. But then we had to shut it right off again because we still owe like 30 to 40 accounts, their initial orders for people. And we've got another waiting list started with just since the middle of July. Again, I'm just talking off the top of my head. So if I'm wrong about this, my wife is going to tell me if she ever hears it, or Dave Lafferty will tell me, but I think we have like another 35 or 40 already waiting just from the last 3 months. And that's without us doing any active solicitation. I mean, I do my shtick on internet, right? I do my shtick here in the podcast, but we don't actually really do a lot of cold calling of customers. We're doing a little bit more because we keep adding reps because Dave Lafferty wants reps. I'm kind of indifferent to it. But we're a bit behind the crunch. And for me, so it puts the international market even further behind. Hoya really handles the international market, and they're trying to figure out how to deal with orders for my products internationally. And I think what's going to ultimately happen is I think it's going to become a much more streamlined portfolio for the international market and not let everybody have the option of everything like they do in the United States, because it's just not feasible internationally because of the way cigars are sold. It's not like they're sold to individual retailers. In most cases, they're sold through distributors, and distributors just can't handle the breadth of my portfolio. So I think that's the direction we're heading, is to try to simplify. And I think that would have actually happened this year had it been that Dortmund had not been canceled. But I think it came as a surprise to everybody when Dortmund got canceled so early. So the other thing too is I also want to make maybe 1 or 2 things that are special just for the international guys. Whereas, we can't supply, where we really run into troubles with the Noxa made products. The Mi Queridas, the Umbagogs, the Tricky Tracas, Western to Stolen Valor. Those are very hard to get in the international market because now I have a factory that's 6 months behind with me. And now I have Hoya that wants to send cigars to wherever, Romania, and they need like 8 boxes of this and 4 boxes of that and 2 boxes of that. they're just not even, they're being so not paid attention to. It's like, they're like beyond irrelevant, you know what I mean? And that's no good either. So I think we have to find a way to streamline that portfolio, particularly from Noxa, to make it more readily available for the international market. And we also need to give a little bit of love there for the international market on a couple items. Our international sales, even though I'm doing absolutely nothing to help it, probably doing everything possible to hurt it, they just keep growing. I mean, I am surprised at how much they're growing. And, but it's, but you know, I think probably the biggest indicator of where I'm at with the international market is I think twice in 2021, I have actually even looked at what my royalty account balance is on the sales in the international market. So I don't even care about my money, much less their money or what the sales volume is or anything. I'm just running around like a chicken without a head, just trying to catch up here in America. I really am. And the other funny part about it is I also feel as though this current situation that we have going on in the United States, I don't believe it's long-term. I don't believe the numbers. I don't think that the growth that we are all seeing right now is true. I think that this is a COVID bubble. I think these back orders are grossly overinflated. I believe that most manufacturers are making too many cigars. And I feel as though we're going to be in a glutful situation come the end of Q1, Q2 of next year. And I think it's going to be a train wreck for a lot of companies because I think they will have way, way overproduced. Now, luckily for you as consumers, that means, hey, guess what? You're probably going to get a lot of cigars for cheaper than you would have otherwise gotten them. But I hope I'm wrong about this. I really do.
Mr. Saka, I fondly remember you being on what was it? I believe Cigar Authority at the beginning of the lockdown when you spoke about similar things with so many cigars being discounted heavily because there was just too much of it and people didn't know where to put shit. And you even said that you at that moment thought you had way over ordered cigars from the year before, and now we live in a very different world.
Yeah, completely opposite. I mean, I think what I was saying at that Cigar Authority thing was that everyone panicked because look, what happened last March of 2020, sales just effectively stopped from us to the retailer because we didn't know what was going on. It was like zombie apocalypse, riots in the streets, bodies piled to nobody knew. So if you're a cigar retailer and you got a humidor full of cigars, if you ran out of something, well, I ain't buying any more until I sell some of these other cigars. It took a couple months for the retailers to realize that, oh my God, people aren't just still buying cigars, they're actually buying more cigars. So we went from a period where we thought it was a full stop and most manufacturers sold out of their inventory at super deep discounted prices to the big box guys because they were worried about what was coming on the horizon, to then only 60, 90 days later, wish they had kept it all. Luckily, I kept mine because I'm too small a company to give those kind of discounts. I can't even do it. So it's not even an option for me. I kept it, wrote it out, and it turned out to make 2020 an incredibly profitable year for Dunbarton Tobacco Trust. In fact, 2020 was the first year that I actually took a personal distribution out of the company. I actually made more than my base salary, which again, in interest of all full disclosure, is $36,000 a year. That's my base salary. All the money that I make out of Dunbarton depends on how we do as a company at the end of the year. Company does well, I do well. Company isn't doing well, well, guess what? I don't do well. It's just that simple. And so I think that, and then it just didn't stop because look, you didn't lose your income in 2020. And you still had your job and you're now working from your house and you're on your computer doing Zoom calls. That guy that was trying to squeeze 2-3 cigars in a week between family and work and church and activities and, you know, him coaching little league and yada, yada, yada. Well, now he had nothing but time. And he also had a lot of free money because he wasn't doing any of that other stuff. There was no going to restaurants. There was no sporting events. There was no God, I got to take that dreaded vacation to my in-laws for Thanksgiving that every year costs me $2,000 that I hate doing, but I have no choice but to do. You didn't have to do it, courtesy of COVID. So everyone had more free money and everyone had more free time, and cigar sales just exploded. And the thing is, when they explode like that, what ends up happening is retailers then can't get what they need, and they start placing back orders. Well, retailers don't back order what they need. They back order an amount that they think they're going to get an adjusted sum to. So in other words, let's say they need 5 boxes of Sobremesa El Americanos. They won't order 5 boxes of Sobremesa El Americanos. They'll order 20. Because what they're hoping is when they land, that when we start carving up how many we got, that if they had asked for 20, that maybe they'll get 25% of what they asked for, because they know that we're going to have to spread it around to all the other people with back orders. The problem is eventually I'm going to have those 20 boxes of Sobremesa El Americanos, and I'm going to dial up Joe and say, hey, Joe, great news. We got those 20 boxes you had on back order for the last 9 months. And he's going to say, well, I really don't have the money right now, but could you send me 5 of those, please? And what am I going to do? Am I going to say, well, fuck you, no? You know, you said you were going to buy 20 boxes and now you're not buying 20 boxes, you cocksucker? No, I can't do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, yeah, Joe, I'll send you the 5. And I believe that most of the back orders that come from the retailers are hyperinflated, because they know that that's what all of us on our end is doing, is we're forensic analyzing all the back orders, trying to figure out how to get everybody a taste of everything. But when it all comes in, I don't believe the market's absorbing. I do not believe, I mean, we're on pace right now that 2021 would be a 568, 580 million cigar import year. That's the pace that we're currently on, manufacturing wise. America's never, since the super boom days, America has never consumed more than 355 million units in any given year. I do not believe that we are consuming 200 million more units a year right now. I think the numbers are fake. And I think that if everybody was smart, they would take a deep breath and they would pay attention to that, but they don't, because they're chasing the dollars. They see the dollar signs that come when you deliver all that. I don't believe it's going to be delivered at the price. And again, I so hope I'm wrong about this, because me being right about it is not good for the industry.
In that light, how do you look at the tobacco shortage that some people are talking about? What does it actually look like in terms of inventory, raw material, getting your hands on high quality stuff to produce the cigars with?
So oddly enough, normally where we all struggle as companies is on wrapper. Wrapper has historically always been the problem. We're always grubbing and fighting for the best wrapper material. Oddly enough, that has not been the fight. Wrapper material is out there in good supply at fair prices at high qualities. We seem to have gotten that leveled out. Our problem is the TRIPA, the filler materials. We have burned through, because of this cigar boom, we have burned through so much filler that we never anticipated burning through. Every factory has inventory levels, but you can only have inventory levels to a point. A, you can only have inventory levels to how many dollars you have. B, you can only have inventory levels to how much space you have. C, you can only have inventory levels to how long aging it makes sense, because not always aging tobaccos is a good thing. And I'm actually one of the people that I'm very vocal about this. I like to use most of my filler tobaccos when they're between 1 to 2 years of age. I very rarely like to use a filler tobacco that's had 3 years of bale aging in it. I just feel like it loses too much flavor, too much oil. It's not the style of cigar that I typically want to make. Now, Moester de Saka Exclusivo, every leaf inside of Moester de Saka Exclusivo is aged a minimum of 5 years. And at this point, most of them are over 7 since I got started. But that's why it's a Moester de Saka. It's out of the norm. It's not something I normally do. Most of the stuff I like to use, I tend to like to use the filler materials on the younger side. So me having super deep inventories beyond the 2-year mark actually doesn't help me, because I don't even want to use those tobaccos once they've had that much time aging. So what's happened is everybody has felt a crisis because we've all sucked down our standing inventories that we had fulfilling the boom. And then we had in Nicaragua, we just had a horrific 2020-21 crop season. We had 2 late hurricanes that delayed the planting by about 4 weeks. If you were lucky, it delayed the planting. For some people, it actually ruined their seedlings and they had to start over again. But it delayed everything about 4 to 5 weeks later than normal. And then we ended up having a torrential rain problem in March with serious hail damage that made the second harvest cut short. So the first planting got delayed because of hurricanes, and then the second planting got caught in the fields, and we lost like 20% of tobacco just drowning in the fields. And then on top of that, it put us in a position where we had to like instantly harvest everything, because we still had 4 primings on most of the plants that would have been staged through the barns over the course of about a 30-day period, because most of those primings come into the barn every 5 to 7 days on the tobaccos that we grow in Nicaragua. But we couldn't leave it in the field, because if we left it in the field, it would have drowned just like the rest of the plants. So we were harvesting like madmen. We took the top 4 primings all together simultaneously because we had no choice. Well, the problem with that is we didn't get the weight. Not that there's anything wrong with the tobacco, but we didn't get the weight we expected to get because we were pulling leaves off the plants 4 weeks earlier than we would have originally pulled them off. Okay, so we lost a lot of weight there. And on top of that, we're now trying to cram into the barns tobacco 4 weeks early. Well, we have the number of barns and the size of the barns scaled to the fields and the amount of tobacco that we grow, understanding that we're going to move a priming in every 5 to 7 days. And when we're moving a priming in every 5 to 7 days, well, that means we're moving a priming out every 5 to 7 days to then go on to pre-industry. Well, now we had to cram 4 primings simultaneously into the barn without the capacity of pulling any of the primings out of the barns. And what ended up happening is the air curing process, it just wasn't good because we just simply had too much stuff hung in the barns. But what choice did we have? If we left it in the field, it was all going to die. So we pull it out of the field. It's all underweight because we took it too early. We put it in a barn that doesn't have capacity to hold it and properly cure it. So now we're losing more in the barn because we can't cure it all right. And the end result is we end up having a 2021 TRIPA shortage. And it's been really, really brutal. Now, luckily, as in most things agricultural, we'll grow more tobacco this year. We're planning for it to try to make up for the shortages that 2020-21 planting season gave us. So hopefully we will have some good weather on both the front end, and hopefully we'll have some good weather on the back end. And hopefully we can get 2 really nice harvests out this year. And hopefully we can start to catch up on this problem. And it is possible. But if we have another awkward situation like last year, I don't even know what next year looks like, because we're at the point now that we're over $10 a pound. That's where we're at. We're over 10 and we're bumping into 11 for stuff that we used to all complain was too expensive at $8.25. And now we're literally begging to pay 11 to find what we need. And I mean, and that's just kind of, I guess, the way supply and demand is. But I'm hoping that the 21-22 season will help us turn this around. And I'm also hoping that prices so rarely come down. We all know that, right? Once they hit a certain level and they realize that the manufacturers can bear it,
you just stay right there.
I have to tell you, I have a dismal number to tell you. My actual true production cost at the factory in the last 90 days has increased 18%.
Oh, wow.
And I don't even know what to do with that number. What do I do with that number? It's such an absurd number. I can't like directly build it into the cost of the cigars, because 18% on the manufacturing end, you know what that equals to you as a consumer on your end? But at the same time, I can't make cigars and sell them for the price I'm selling them if this number is a true number. I'm hoping that this is a short-term hiccup, and that by the time I get to early part of next year, I'll start to see the numbers track back to a more normal level. But right now, the short term, there's nothing in the short term that looks good. Everything is just it's all so messy and it's all so ugly.
Jose wanted to chime in.
Who, me? Steve, I'm going to agree with you on the part of, because I just came from a 4-week trip, Holland, Germany, Switzerland. I think that people are just reacting on futures and possibilities. A lot of things could happen. Well, my question to you is this. Going to the 1990 till today, if you were to mention 3 people, not companies, people, that in your mind, that in your thoughts, with your years of experience, have made a big difference in the industry, who would those 3 people be?
That's not an easy question, Jose. I mean, it's hard, as much as I'd hate to admit it, and it's just really, it sucks, but Jonathan Drew definitely is one of them. I mean, he found a way to connect with consumers and to tap into an audience that nobody thought was tappable, to really kind of change the face of who cigar consumers were. So, I mean, I don't think that John did anything from a factory tobacco cigar or any of that stuff that really changes the lexicon. But the way you communicate with consumers and that you can reach out for other consumers that you didn't think could be consumers, he definitely set a trend that made a real difference. So I think Jonathan Drew is someone that's had a major impact. And look, John, you're my friend, but you know, he's also a douchebag, and he's selfish, and he's impossibly difficult. And John comes with his great, and he comes with his bad. No different than me. But John has definitely made an impact. Who else in the last 20 years has made an impact?
I would say from the 90s till today, last 40 years.
I mean,
last 30 years. Maybe.
I think Carlito Fuente made an impact in the way that, and I'm talking about Junior, not the rest of them. I think he made an impact in the fact that he could show that there was a consumer base out there that was willing to pay more for better. That you didn't have to look, for all practical purposes, Fuente was an inexpensive manufacturer that made primarily bundled cheaper cigars, cheaper box cigars that you bought because you couldn't afford an H. Upmann or a Romeo or a Monte Cristo or even a Tiamo, to be honest with you. Tiamo was considered a much better brand than Fuente was when they were competing head to head in the marketplace. And I think Carlito, under his tenure when he was young, he was able to say, hey, let me push this concept of Opus X, and let me push this concept of Hemingway, and let me push this concept of Don Carlos, and making a better grade of product and setting a higher price point on it, and not making excuses for doing so, saying, here, this is what it is, this is what we want to do, and kind of leading that. I mean, it really kind of set up where it allows somebody like me do what I currently do. The fact that he was able to get consumers to not just look at a cigar as a commodity item only. I spend $2, I get to smoke for 2 hours. I spend, you know what I mean? So I think that had a major impact in its given era, because I think that really kind of led to the Padron from becoming a cafeteria budget only 1,000 series. Because I don't know about you, Jose, but I remember when Padron first released the Anniversario, which now it's called the Anniversary. In my head, what did I say? I'm like, who the fuck is going to spend $10 to smoke a goddamn Padron? Are they crazy? Nobody's going to do that, right?
Nashville, I think was it Nashville 1998? I think, was it?
Yeah, it was like right around then, because before that, Padron just made all these really shitty kind of cigars for the most part. That was what they were. And what I'm saying is that what Carlito did back in, the late 80s, early 90s, kind of led the groundwork for what then Padron could do, which then led the stepping stone for how the cheap ass bundle Oliva people and anybody that's in our business Oliva was the thing that was in the bundle rack in every retail store is what Oliva was. Nobody that could spend more than $3 was buying an Oliva that then let them go to the step of, hey, let's make V's and Milanios. So I think I would give credit to Carlito Fuente Jr. for setting that up. And then just to be just brutally honest, I think I am. I think that I have made a very significant impact in the way cigars are currently sold and marketed. I think my early way with the writing and Cigar Nexus and the, separating out the fact that there are consumers that are willing to pay for quality pieces. And I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of companies do today that are really the direct result of ideas and concepts that I implemented. And it's at every level. It's with the big box guys, the Cigars Internationals of the world. It's at the branding level. I see so many things that were ideas of mine that have been copied so many times that they've just kind of become part of the infrastructure. I really, as arrogant as it sounds, I really think I think I've had a major, major impact on the direction that the industry has gone in many, many ways. Now, there are other people we could argue. Pete Johnson really kind of set up that kind of boutique kind of concept that you could kind of come out of nowhere and scrap and fight as a dog. His name definitely belongs in that conversation. From a business perspective, Keith Meyer, Cigars International, he made a huge impact. And look, Lou was one thing, but when Keith was at the top of his game and the way he was doing what he was doing, he was running circles around Lou in the 2000s. So a guy like Keith Meyer had a super major impact. There's tons of people who have contributed. So, but you asking me the question off the top of my head, that's my answer. But I'm sure it's one that really probably needs more reflection and thought, because I'm sure I didn't get it right.
No, I think, look, I agree. And it's funny, Reinhardt and I were talking the other day about this, and I've said it on shows. To me, I think one of the biggest thing about Nicaragua, great tobacco, great things, whatever you want to say. But remember, before that, it was Joya and Padron. To me, Jonathan Drew, with everything you can add to it, how close we are. To me, if there's somebody who put Nicaragua on the map to the next level, was Jonathan Drew.
Well, you know what I think has a lot to do with where Nika is today? So when the embargo occurred, and our Cuban friends, let's skip the whole went to Canary Islands section and went to Florida section. By the point they got consolidated in the Dominican Republic for the most part, right? A few scattered guys went to Honduras. I think one of the biggest mistakes that they made as a group was they just so embraced the whole Cuban thing that they were just like, knock off the Cuban brands. And I understand why, because they owned those brands and those brands were stolen from them. I get it. As far as they were concerned, they were the owners of X, Y, and Z. But they also kind of like sold it as a Cuban alternative. Like everything they did was to make it Cuban-like. And the truth is, you can't make Cuban-like cigars in the Dominican Republic. And I think what Nicaragua did was Nicaragua never held itself up to Cuba. Nicaragua said, we make Nicaraguan cigars. We make Nicaraguan puros. We make cigars that are more robust. We make cigars that are stronger. We make cigars that are like this. We never went down the path of saying that, oh, we're Cuban-esque. We're like them. We're better than them. We just kind of like, dude, I'm a fat white dude. That's who I am. And just embrace that I'm a fat white dude. And it was kind of the way with Nicaragua. Nicaragua just embraced its strengths and it touted its strengths, and it didn't get into that trying to be like what everybody considered to be the best in the world. It just was itself. And I think that made a real difference. And you see that difference too. The Dominicans don't do it anymore either. They used to. That was playbook rule number one from the 80s, 90s, and even into the early 2000s. But you don't see anybody living off that shtick anymore. Nobody does, because it's a failed approach. It doesn't work. And I think that has a lot to do with Nicaragua. Is just, I guess it kind of weirdly, oddly ties way back to the beginning to the authenticity comment. It just rang true. It was just more authentic. Because the reality is, I can't make something that tastes like a Cuban cigar. But guess what? They can't make a tricky Traca. I don't care what they do. They don't have the materials to make that, and I don't have the materials to make a Cueti Orze Imperiales as much as I wish I did, but I don't. So why try to do the one-on-one? Do the, hey, there's A, there's B, they're both really good, but they're different. Try for yourself, see what you prefer.
Thanks, Steve.
Riot in Dubai had a question for you.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Very well, sir.
The last time we met was in Vegas, and I was telling you that I'm very excited about the shipment soon to be arriving actually in a couple of weeks. And you're like, why do you guys like my cigars in the Middle East? And, you know, you mentioned something about the international market. And I really think, if I may say so, that the international market does deserve a lot of your attention. People here talk about your cigars. People here love your cigars. And definitely in general, the same way the US and Europe is having a boom, the Middle East is having a huge boom as far as cigars are concerned. Our boom is of a different nature, though. If you look at the US, it's huge consumption, but our boom is an actual on top of the consumption. It's like a seismic shift from Cuban cigars to New World cigars, or non-Cuban cigars, if you may. And so some attention from the producers and some attention from the cigar companies in general will help in that whole approach of showing that there are other, if not as good, better options out there in the market. Now, to my question. Yes, there's a lot to learn from what you said. And I love the fact when you mentioned that people, if they listen carefully, they would understand and listen and hear the strategy that you're talking about for your company going forward. And I love how open and transparent and you know, clear you are about what you believe. But as much as you've had a lot of instances of success, I'm very curious as to where do you feel, truthfully, you went wrong, or if you had another shot at certain things, you would do it differently, and what were they? We're not talking about the obvious of better tobacco or what have you, but where do you seriously believe you went wrong, if ever?
Okay, so on the international market thing, I know that wasn't your question, but part of the problem that I want you guys to just grapple with is, think about this. There is not, all of the European Union for me is not worth what the state of New Hampshire is. So when you're trying to decide where to best allocate your efforts and your dollars, it's much easier for me to pick my little tiny home state of 1.2 million people, that I don't have to deal with all these rules and tax stamps and filings and all of this stuff. And I actually make more money selling cigars in the United States than I make selling them into the international market, because you guys just have stupid taxes and stupid distribution channels, and you make everything absurdly expensive. I mean, so for a lot of times when it comes to these things, it's kind of just, for me, an allocation of resources. And given I only have so much, it's just easier to deal with the domestic market, my domestic market, than the international market. Another thing about the international market, it's only been recently that New World cigars, just because that seems to be the term we got kind of landed on, have become popular internationally, is really for two reasons. The first reason is because of social media and internet websites, and that these consumers are now being exposed to all these other things, and it's human nature to want what we don't have. So now you have a genuine interest. The truth is, there have always been very good New World cigars, but you as international consumers, you weren't getting them because your distributors and your retailers did not believe that you as consumers were willing to spend real money for them. So what they would do is they would buy always the shittiest cigars that we made in the New World, the cheap low-end bundle product. because then they would sell it to you on the basis of price. Well, yeah, if you're smoking our scrap $2 piece of shit cigars that we used to cash recover on a factory operation, and you're now comparing them head to head with a marquee Habanos, no wonder why the European consumer or the international consumer has always thought that Dominican cigars are shit, Nicaraguan cigars are shit, because guess what? The only cigars you guys were getting were shit, because that's all that your distributors and retailers were willing to buy. And it's only been recently, with the fact that so much of Habanos has now been transferring over to the Asian market, that they can't make money on that anymore, that they've had to come to the realization that, oh my God, we have to find something to sell, because our people don't want to buy Cuban cigars anymore. Only the Asians want to buy Cuban cigars. And why have these markets decided this? Because over the last 10 years, you've actually started to get some decent New World cigars that we can actually have a one-to-one comparison with, where we can say, oh, hey, is this Cuban Romeo and Juliet Churchill? How does it compare with a Sobremesa Brulee? You never had that opportunity until the last 5 to 7 years, 10 years at the very outside. So getting to the important question that you asked is, what have I fucked up? I think the answer to that is more like, what haven't I fucked up, right? I mean, part of being someone that does a lot of stuff, you're continually, constantly making mistakes and breaking things. It's always a question of, how do you sweep up the pieces and what can you glue together and how can you make sure you don't break that thing again? I think, so making mistakes and making screw ups, that's pretty much an everyday occurrence. But I think the question you're asking is, if there was something I could go back and like really change, I wish I had had more patience with my partners at Drew Estate. I wish I had been able to get them to realize that the path that they wanted to go down, the machine-made cigar, flavored cigar path to be ultimately bought by a big company, was actually a short-sighted path, that they themselves would have actually made way more money by staying in the saddle, riding out and doing the work for a few more years, that ultimately it would have made them much, much wealthier than they already currently are. And that it would have also, that I would have also stayed at the company and taken it into the direction that I think we could have gone in. But ultimately, they just wore me the hell out. I just couldn't take it anymore. I got tired of fighting with partners who I thought I was trying to protect their best interests, but they were much more eager for the quick dollar. So I think for me, I wish I had gutted that out even a little longer. But honestly, I don't know that had I would have been successful. But I wonder if I kind of threw in the towel a little too early on them, because even the way their buyout went with Swisher, I think I could have done them a better deal. I think I could have even made them richer there. The problem for them is they didn't see that, because I don't have the silver tongue salesman speak. I'm the pragmatic, practical, this is the way things work, this is what things are worth, boom, boom, boom. I think for them, they probably doubted that I could take them there. But ultimately, had I been able to convince them to stay the course, they would all have done way, way better. They really would have. And so I think that for me, if there's anything I wish I had gutted that out for probably another year, in the hope of getting them to take that next step, because I think they could have done even much greater things than what they're currently doing now.
Thank you.
Reinhold had a question as well. Reinhold, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. It's always a pleasure listening to you, and you always sound like a grumpy old man, like I am.
Because I am a grumpy old man. Not that I sound like one, it's because I am one.
No, it's really funny. I love it. I love your comparison between New Hampshire and the European Union and all the other stuff. I have different opinions on a lot of that stuff.
I know you do.
We could go into a deep discussion over nights and nights and nights, I'm sure. But what I wanted to ask you, and I am working on that subject for years now, and the question is simple but difficult. Are you a boutique cigar maker, and what is a boutique cigar maker?
Yeah, that is a difficult question because I don't really even know. I don't really even know what that really means, because I would make the argument that if you're really a boutique cigar maker, you can't make really great cigars. That you can't make them consistently because you need to have inventories of tobacco, and to have those inventories of tobacco costs money, and that money has to come from somewhere. And I think it's really hard as a really small company to really be able to produce something that's consistently great. I think you can do things in pockets and windows, but I think that you're at a real disadvantage to really make the best cigars. And the other thing too is whenever you have these boutique cigar makers that make like 500 boxes of something, right? The reality is when you start production on something, the first 2 weeks of cigars that you make are the worst cigars you're going to make. So, I mean, when you really think about it, a lot of times these small limited production things, they don't go through the cost of going through that front end learning curve to get their people into a groove where they make things consistently. It's one of the reasons why we as a company, we don't make anything to order other than the limited stuff. Everything else is just being made all the time. And then it becomes my responsibility to figure out how to sell it. But I want the person that makes whatever, Sobremesa Brulee Toros, every day when they come to work, all I want them to do is make Sobremesa Brulee Toros every single day of the week after week, month after month. I want them to just become so good at just doing that they just don't do anything else. Now, as an American, probably as anybody, that sounds like incredibly boring. And why would I want to do that? The reality is 98% of the factory workers on the floor, that's what they want. They just want to earn their paycheck. They want their cigars to pass quality control. They want to get their money per unit. They don't want to be making all these different sizes and different blends and all this different stuff, because all it does is cost them money and more grief. So it's really better when you have enough production and sales to actually make better quality cigars when they can be in that kind of flow. And for me, when I think of a boutique cigar company, there's no way to ever achieve that flow because you're never selling enough units to keep people on that. And the thing is, really, for me, a factory is where cigars go to die. A factory is where they just screw up perfectly good materials that you're giving them. Cigars are good before they get to the factory. I mean, the factory is all about standards, practices, methodologies. It's a very simple thing, a factory. So for me, it's where I feel as though I could make just as good as cigars on a kitchen table anywhere. If the tobacco is good and I employ the proper standards, practices, and methodologies, all the other stuff is ancillary. So I don't think that the size and the scale really is it either. I actually feel that the best boutique cigar manufacturers could be when you're a really large company and you have something like a Liga Privada in it that you kind of treat as an island onto its own, where you can do this really high-end skunk work kind of stuff, but yet you got the other 95% of the factory doing what you need to pay the regular bills and make cigars in the right price point. So, I mean, I don't know, is boutique the size of the company? Is boutique the way you think about the product? Is boutique the price of the product? Is boutique who is the face of the product? I mean, because look, there's a ton of like boutique companies that have people who are the face of the company, but they really have absolutely nothing to do with the cigars. They're just getting a cigar made by a big factory that they're then putting a band on and creating a brand around and some sort of nonsensical origin story. And then they're going out and selling it. And look, you as a consumer, if you like it and it's a fair value, you're not getting ripped off. But the boutique story is really a lie. There's no boutique in there at all. It's really just coming out of the main pool of what a Pepin or an Abdel is making or a Drew Estate is making. And then it's just becoming this. So I have never been able to figure out what the term boutique makes. And in fact, I don't run a lot of magazine ads, but I think we have one that says we don't make boutique cigars. We just make the best cigars. Is kind of it, because I don't know whether being boutique is good or bad. In my view, being boutique is bad, because just from a understanding the operation of what it takes to make cigars, being boutique is not good. You know, being able to be a parasite on a much bigger operation that has much more capacity is really a better way to do it. You know what I mean? And it's one of the reasons why, look, I get some amazing work out of Hoya, and I get some amazing work out of Noxa. Why do I get that amazing work? Partially because I'm giving them amazing materials, or I'm forcing them to buy amazing materials for my projects. And B, because I overpay them both. My cigars are the most profitable cigars in both of their factories. They make more money on what they make for me than anything else they make in their building. I incentivize them to put extra effort into mine. And I don't just incentivize them dollars, I also incentivize them in a way that, well, I'm a dick and I'm in Nicaragua every month. And when I don't like something, I'm not shy to say, I don't like this. This is fucked up. This is wrong. This is that. This is unacceptable. Those 8,000 whatevers, I'm not taking them. Shred them. Hey, I don't care. You know what you're supposed to be doing. I'm paying you this amount of money, and this is what I expect for my money. I don't let them control me. I control them. But I do it in a way that's nice, because if they do what they're supposed to do, I literally make them 4 to 6 times more profit than they would on a lot of the other products they make in their factory. So there's a reason to keep Steve Saka, the asshole, happy, because it actually makes them quite a bit richer, making me happy. And the other thing, and I think Juan Martinez is someone to ask, and you could ask Noxa too. I think that some of the standards and practices that I've made them employ on my items have now kind of filtered over to some of their other products. That, you know, they are now making things slightly different and looking at different things than they would have looked at in the past, because they see the fact that I've made them do it here, and they see how many more cigars I'm buying and ordering, and that, yeah, you know what, it is actually worth spending 2 cents more here and 4 cents there and 8 cents here. And I know to you guys on your end as a consumer, you're thinking 2 cents, 4 cents, 8 cents doesn't matter. But when you're at the factory level, it makes a huge difference. I mean, when you're talking about that, you're going to be making 50,000 units a day. Just do the math. 50,000 units a day, a dime, that's $5,000. $5,000 in a month of production is $100,000. At the end of the year, it's $1 million is what that dime equals. So it's not little money that you're talking about. And the thing is, factories by their nature, they're always looking to be as efficient as possible, because that's how they stay in business. But sometimes it's trying to understand where are the places that you should be efficient and where are the places that you should spend a little more money. And a lot of times in a lot of these factory operations, they don't understand the cigar consumer. They don't understand what gives me a little bit of a chubby, you know what I mean? What floats my boat, what's important to me as a person that buys cigars, because they're really disconnected from you as the consumer. So that's kind of big part of my role, is kind of getting them to understand what actually consumers care about and what they're actually willing to pay for and what they're actually not willing to pay for and what ultimately matters. And I would make the argument that Pepin Garcia would not be Pepin Garcia had Pete Johnson not been there in the beginning to help him along. Because Pepin Garcia, good cigar man, good tobacco man, fucking clueless when it comes to what cigar consumers actually wanted to smoke or why they smoked it. Really, Pete's the one that kind of taught him that and led him down that road to get him into that direction. And that's a place where us gringos really come in handy, because we kind of provide the conduit that allows them to learn those things. But getting back to the core question, how do you define it? Because I don't even know how to define it, even after all of these years.
As you, Steve, I don't have an answer to the question, but you were mostly now talking about quality of tobacco and quality of cigars, which is out of the question, not only for boutique brands, so-called boutique brands, and nevertheless also for huge brands. It doesn't matter if you put out 1 million cigars or 1,000 cigars a year, the cigars should be fine. My question was more of a definition. Who is a boutique brand? Is a boutique brand or a boutique manufacturer someone who puts out up to 1 million of cigars, or is integrated vertically, or is a boutique brand also a brand of, let's say, Rocky Patel, who says, I'm doing a limited edition, and once it's gone, it's gone. I know that quality is everybody's looking for quality. But
I definitely don't think quality is an indicator of boutique brand or not.
No, of course not.
There's plenty of boutique brands that the quality are good on, and there's plenty of boutique brands the quality sucks on. So that isn't it. Is it just how new and fresh the name is? Does that make a boutique? Is it the size, and is the size determined by the number of the units, or is it determined by the dollar value? I mean, is a boutique brand, if you just walk into an average cigar store and you say, hey, have you ever heard of this brand? And when 98 out of 100 consumers say, I've never heard of that, well, that's a boutique brand. Because I can guarantee you, you go to a cigar store and if you go into an American cigar store, okay, skip international, and you just take 100 people that come through the door and you go, hey, do you know who Steve Saka is? You'll be lucky if 1 out of that 100 actually said, yeah, I know who that is. I mean, they have no clue. Is that the defining how much notoriety, how much brand awareness they have make it a boutique brand? I heard. I have a hard time. I have a hard time figuring it out, to be honest with you, Reinhold. I wish I knew the answer.
Our friend Dave Garofalo once said that originally a boutique brand was a brand made for, let's say, a house brand of a certain shop, or for some distributor, whatever. I don't know if that's still true. Now a lot of brands call themselves a boutique brand because they're small, they have a limited production, limited availability. So I was just trying to get your opinion.
I mean, and again, that kind of falls back into, we as consumers generally think that things that are done in smaller batches get more attention, and therefore they're going to be better, right? That's just the common conventional wisdom that we have. And what I would argue is that actually is the scenario that's the worst when it comes to handmade cigars, that you really isn't that. I mean, I think maybe part of what makes, I can tell you, one of the things that makes us really different as a company, nobody has a say in any of our brands. Nobody in my office gets to smoke anything and have an opinion. Nobody at the factory, they do smoke because they're making it, but they don't get an opinion. Nobody has an opinion. I'm it. I'm the only guy. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's this, whether it's that, nobody else gets an opinion. They all have an opinion, They can voice their opinion, but they understand that I don't give a fuck about their opinion. Okay. And so, I mean, how boutique does that get? I'm the final arbiter of everything. I ultimately am the guy that says, this is what's going in the box. And I don't care what everybody else thinks. And if everybody else thinks the other one's better, well, then guess what? Go start your own damn cigar company. I'm not stopping you from going and doing your own thing. So, I mean, is that boutique enough?
Steve, I think that will be the perfect approach, at least for me, for my opinion.
Because the way most companies today make, particularly the larger companies, is they kind of solicit a lot of opinions when it comes to their blends, whether they like them or they don't like them. I would argue that the larger companies, they have all the advantages. They have tremendous inventories of tobacco to work from. They have a very well-educated staff to make cigars. I would argue where their downfall is they just have too many fingers in the pie. They got 1 million people that are giving their 2 cents about how something should be branded and sold. And you got 1 million people deciding how something should taste and how strong it should be. It's not like it's just one person. And what ends up happening is that everything they make is nice, but none of it is great. None of it is unique enough because they're always kind of driving towards the common denominator of trying to please as many people as possible. And I just embrace the fact that I'm not going to please everybody. My price points are not going to please everybody. Now, could I make cigars that sell for $6, $7? Yeah, I can make cigars that sell for $6, $7. I know how to do it, but why do I want to? Why do I want to do that lift and compete with all those people that have all those advantages above me? So I choose that, hey, I'm going to stay in the expensive lane. I mean, I don't know what other small company, but I mean, when you really think about it, there's not many small companies that are willing to just basically go and fight for that $13 to $20 range right out of the gate. You know what I mean? That's a pretty scary territory to fight in because you're up against some real legit heavy hitters. But the truth is, I really want to steal their business. I don't want to steal Nick Melillo's business at Foundation or Skip Martin's Romacraft business. I mean, what am I stealing? I get 20% of their business. Maybe I get $1 million a year. No, man, I want to take a bite out of Davidoff. I want Davidoff money. I want those guys that, you know, I want to take a bite out of Padron. I want to take a bite out of Fuente. I want to take a bite out of Altadis. Those are the guys that have the big customers. So everything I do is always focused at how do I get to eat some of their lunch? Not how do I get to eat some of Southern Draw's lunch or Warp's lunch or Viaje's lunch or, you know, Romacraft's lunch. Because guess what? They don't have enough potato chips in their box to keep me happy. Okay. I can only steal so much. So I'm always thinking about those guys as being my competitors. They obviously don't think of me as being a competitor because I'm just so small, which is perfect for me. Because the longer they don't think of me as a competitor, the better off I am, which was the same scenario at Drew Estate. Honestly, Davidoff, STG, General Cigars, Altadis, they should never have allowed Drew Estate to ever happen. They should have squashed us like a bug when we got right around the point where we were producing about 45,000, 50,000 cigars a day and started to creep. They should have started paying attention. They didn't. Their ineptitude allowed us to grow to where we were. It should have never, ever happened. And honestly, right now, companies are making the same mistake with me. I am sucking up. I'm sucking up a lot of their high dollar value consumers, and they're letting me do it. And God bless them. I'm glad they're stupid. Because I've always contended that it isn't that I'm smarter than everyone else. I'm just not as dumb as they are. And it's just kind of the way it goes. So, but man, what is boutique and what isn't boutique? And does the consumer ultimately care? That's my other question. I think in the end, the consumer cares that, hey, I'm getting a cigar that I'm really enjoying, and I feel as though the money I'm spending on it is a good value. And that's also one of the reasons why I've never been big on price sensitivity. I've always been kind of guy that said, hey, let the consumer decide if it's worth the ride. You know, I make it, it costs this much to make. This is what it costs to make it consistently. Hey, this is expensive. But in the end, whether it's expensive or not expensive, I don't get to make that decision. The consumer gets to make that decision when they smoke it. And we all make the same calculation. And it's just that simple. Do we feel good about our purchase? Do we feel like we got value for our money? And if the answer to that question is yes, well, then guess what? There's nothing wrong with the price. Even if the price is $29 a cigar, or if the price is $6 a cigar, it's the same question every consumer asks themselves. So I have been absolutely unhelpful on your boutique question. I apologize, Ron.
No, but still, thanks a lot. A lot of readers ask.
And let me have another conversation while I have you in the Zoom. You know, I have been slowly adding advertisers, and you're like one of the last ones. So we need to have a conversation about how we start doing some business together. And because I like your magazine, I like the publication, I like the way it's trended over the years, and I really should start giving you some money.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. The question about the boutique was coming from our readers mostly, and I have a problem with that too. But thanks for your elaborations, and sorry, Reinhard, it took so long. I'm sorry to all of you. You all have more questions, I guess.
Dude, I'll talk for. Let me say this. I'm here now, sitting on my ass. I will stay as long as you want me to stay. So there's no time rush on my end. It's really just how much your audience wants to bear.
I really appreciate it. And the fact that we still have, I don't know, 70 people or so with us live right now over on Facebook and here at the lounge. So I believe people are enjoying it a lot. I briefly wanted to pick your brain on one thing that came to mind now when you spoke about what's happening on the factory level and how things could get messy there. Reinhold also spoke about the term that is highly overused and probably overrated with boutique. And I guess the very same is true for the term master blender. Because what does it ultimately mean? So when these two things come together, thinking about the operations on the factory level, I heard you say once in an interview that even the slightest change in bunching can make a tremendous difference in the outcome of a blend of a cigar. And interestingly enough, we spoke about this with Hamlet Paredes, and I had a conversation with George Brightman about this, where they would say almost every torcedor on the Galera floor is a blender, solely by the way those people handle the leaf, fold it, put it in the bunch. Would you agree?
Yeah, look, tobacco by its nature, the only thing consistent in handmade cigars is that they're inconsistent. Everything about handmade cigars is inconsistent. So what you're trying to take is you're trying to take a process that's inherently inconsistent and make it as consistent as possible. And one of the ways that you do that is you're constantly adjusting the recipe that you use to make the cigars, because it isn't tobacco's different from crop to crop. Tobacco is different from bale to bale, leaf to leaf. So when you're making really high-end cigars, your average bunchero for most of your brands are doing no backfilling, and they're doing no leaf positioning, and they're doing no judgment about the texture of the leaf in their hand. They're pretty much following kind of a Betty Crocker recipe. I need one leaf of this, I need one leaf of that, I need one leaf of that. I break, I flip, I break, I flip, I twist, I boom, I make a bunch, and it's done. That's how it's normally made for like literally like 98% of the cigars. Now, what you really want when you're making really super high-end cigars is you want for that bunchero to be able to pick up that leaf and go, this one's a little thinner in texture than normal. So in order for this guy to get the same amount of the ingredient that the master blender expects him to, I need to pick up a little extra and break a piece off it and add that broken piece there. Hey, I need to, when I pick up this piece of Viso, oh, the tip of it's broken. So I need to steal a tip from this one over here and put it here. And also when I do those breaks, I don't necessarily do the breaks front to back, back to front, but I take those breaks, and because the blender wants me to make that cigar more backloaded in strength, I need to move what was from the back of the cigar to the front of the cigar, from the front of the cigar to the back of the cigar. So there's these little individual things that really separate the difference between making a traditional high quality premium handmade cigar versus one that is executed at a much higher level. And that requires the bonchero to actually understand what he's doing, why he's doing it, and what the goal is. Because in the end, the goal is not to follow the Betty Crocker recipe. The end goal is that when the consumer smokes it, they get as near a similar experience as they can possibly get, whether that be in strength, whether that be in aroma, and whether that be in flavor. So in order for that to happen, you need to have a bonchero that has the flexibility and the comprehension of doing what he's doing and why he's doing it. So that's really, yeah, you could make the argument that they're all little mini master blenders on the floor. Now, certain ones require more complexity. Something like Sin Compromiso or Sobremesa, the original Sobremesa, versus Mi Querida. Mi Querida is a much simpler cigar to make. It doesn't require that kind of technical aptitude to make a Mi Querida the way that Mi Querida needs to be made. But it absolutely requires that type of technical aptitude to be able to make a Muestra de Saka Naka tamale. So it depends on the individual product line as to what you need. But it definitely can make a big difference what the bonchero does on the floor. But for the most part, most don't. Most of the cigars you smoke, and you should be happy about it, because if everybody was putting that amount of work into the cigars, well, then all the cigars would be at least $2 more. So it would totally change the whole price structure of the way the market works. And the other thing too is when you start getting into the weeds of those kind of details, how many consumers can even really appreciate the difference? And that's one of the reasons why I've always said that I find that our best customers are the ones that are the most discerning and the most experienced. That once they've been smoking cigars for not just a decade, but sometimes 2 decades, that those guys that can actually tell the difference, those are actually our best customers, are the ones that now I'm winning a lot of new customers just because our cigars burn well and draw well. Okay. So that helps a lot, and they're consistent, but the more discerning the consumer is, and the more educated the consumer is, and the more experienced the consumer is, I actually find that to actually work in my company's favor. And that really kind of is the guy I'm catering to. And I'm catering to the guy that, look, there's not a day that's going to go by that Cigar International is not going to send you an email that you can get brand XYZ for 70 to 80% off. The guy that I'm making cigars for doesn't give a flip. He would never buy whatever that is anyways. Doesn't even attract him. Could be half off, could be 90% off. He still ain't buying his money. He ain't spending his money on it. So I don't even worry about those customers. I don't even worry about trying to be competitive with those customers, because I never can wallow down in the mud at that price point anyways. So I'm always only focused on the top tier customer. I have this very rude statement that I'm not afraid to say out loud, but something that would get me lambasted, but I don't care. I just don't make cigars for the poor, period. I just don't do it. Okay. There are hundreds, if not thousands of brands in the marketplace that a consumer can spend anywhere from $2 to $8 for, and they can satisfy their cigar smoking desires. I am not interested in taking care of that customer. Not my guy. Don't care. It's not my obligation to make cigars to cover all price points. I'm not a charity. I do this for profit. And the only place that I can compete on an even playing field is at the top tier, because I can't compete on the bottom tier, because all of the large factories, they have all the efficiency advantages. The companies have all the sales advantages. They got huge sales teams. They got huge marketing budgets. Heck, They give you swag items that cost 4 times more than the damn cigar costs to make, for God's sakes, because they're pulling it out of one marketing budget, okay, that was designated to be their PCA marketing budget that they didn't spend at PCA. So now we're going to spend it over here and make these really cool whatevers, and they are really cool whatevers. But the truth is, I can't make any of that shit. I don't got that kind of money. You know, my cigars have to live and die on their own. So the only place for me where I can compete is at the top end. I personally believe that I can make a cigar as good as Padron, as good as Opus X, as good as Davidoff, as good as anyone. I do not believe that they can make us, that they have any advantage from actually making a cigar better. So that's the place that I choose, because I feel at least there, the playing field is level and I can battle in that. And even there, I'm still at a huge disadvantage because they have all of the luxury of being Opus X and being Padron Anniversary and being Davidoff White Label. And look, label, they've earned their pedigree. They've earned their legacy. They have ground out decades of work and have delivered consistent smokes to their consumers for decades, and they've earned it. But for me, it's the only place I feel like I even have any hope at all of competing with. So that is the lane that I'm in.
With the aspiration of competing only on that level, do you think that ultimately being vertically integrated and having your own factory is the ultimate?
No, I don't think so at all. I think sometimes those things become an anchor around your neck. When you have a factory, you then have to keep all those people employed. When you own the fields and you grow the tobacco, yeah, you get to do what you want with the good tobacco, but you have to figure out what to do with all the mediocre and all the crappy tobacco. Mm-hmm. You have a lot more. I mean, it's much nicer being able to just say, hey, I want to buy the tenderloin. Yeah, charge me 50% more for it than what I should be paying for it, but I don't have to buy the whole cow and figure out what to do with the whole cow. So, I mean, I don't. Vertical integration is one of those things that sounds attractive, but when you actually start to think of the mechanics of it, it's really very unattractive. Because what happens when you grow all of your own filler and you have a bad crop year? What happens with all that filler? Guess what? It goes into all your cigars because you have no choice but to use it. And all of your product all simultaneously goes down. You know, so yeah, when things are good, it's good. When things are bad, it's bad across the board. I think I feel as though vertical integration again, and I'm also going to be honest with you, there's nobody that's vertically integrated. It's just an absolute utter bullshit lie. There's not a single factory on the planet that's vertically integrated. Yeah, they may have like 1 or 2 products in their mix in some of the largest factories, but even there, they're not vertically integrated. It's not like they can make the bands. It's not like they can make the Burmacol 303 that they need to actually mount the heads to the cigars. It's not like they're the ones that are actually making the tuck cutters. So nobody is 100% vertically integrated. It almost feels like it's just something to say because it sounds sexy in a magazine or an article piece. I feel much better about the concept of, hey, I don't have to deal with this shit. I just buy the good stuff and then you just get the good stuff. It's like going to a high-end restaurant. That chef doesn't have to worry about the lower grades of cod or tuna. He can just buy the very tippy top because his customers are willing to pay the $200 a pound it costs to have the very best belly tuna on the planet. So I would argue that vertical integration, I don't necessarily see it as a positive. And I definitely see it much more as a marketing buzz thing than anything else. And I would argue that nobody's really vertically integrated anyways, that it's really just kind of a fallacy.
Excellent point. Mitch.
I'm unmuted, I hope.
You are.
Oh, excellent. Steve, I've really been enjoying this conversation. I think I learned a lot about business in general, although mine was on a much smaller scale. And I wish I had a conversation with you like 35 years ago. I would have done much better. As far as
just for the record, I wish I had a conversation with myself 35 years ago. I'm definitely much better off today than I was 35 years ago. I can tell you that.
I'm very interested because I saw another interview with you and you were talking about using pipe tobacco. I was wondering if you could tell me more about that and if I'll ever have a chance to buy a cigar made with it. And lastly, when you're blending, is there a certain vitola that you start with and you get it perfect before you move on to others?
All right, let's start with the easier question. So historically, as an industry, we used to always blend a kind of like 5 5/8 by 46 ring gauge. That was the classic Cuban Corona Gorda size. That was pretty much in vogue about 4 decades ago. As we've broken away, what's now become the standard is that almost everybody blends to a Toro, a 6 by 52. And when I say almost everybody, I really is pretty much everybody. It's kind of universally 6 by 52, because really what you're trying to do is you're trying to strike where the middle point is of the span. And 6 by 52 is much closer to the middle, particularly when you consider the fact that in the US market, the 3 most popular selling sizes are Robusto, Toro, and then like a 6 by 60 Gigantes. Those 3 sizes easily account for 80% of all the sales in the marketplace at this point. So the only time you don't blend to the 6 by 52 is when you're making something specific that you know, hey, I'm going to make a Lonsdale, I'm going to make a Lancero, I'm intentionally going to make a Corona. You would start with whatever that vitola size or shape was. I know I'm going to make a unicorn, so I'm not going to make 6 by 52 Toros and a unicorn. I'm going to start with this weird diademus shape, and that's where I'm going to blend just from the diademus shape. So, but for most things, most people blend to 6 by 52, because once you get the blend right for 6 by 52, that blend tends to almost scale proportionally for everything that's from like a 50 to a 56 ring gauge. And then the modification that it takes to make it a 60 ring gauge is a very simple modification. Now, when you start getting to the 48 and 46s, you then actually really have to start to adjust the blend. Oftentimes, the tobacco in a given line that's sold in Robusto, Toro, double Coronas, the blend, if they're really doing their job right and they're trying to keep it as a similar experience as possible, they'll actually find that the tobaccos may be slightly different in the 46 and the 48s. And look, 42 is another category, but as a U.S., primarily as a U.S. seller of cigars, I don't have to work on 42s because Americans just don't pay the money that 42s cost. And the only weird thing you got to work on is Lanceros. And Lanceros are just utter nonsense. All the crap about the blending skill of a Lancero is just an absolute utter lie. There's no blending skill in making Lanceros. Lanceros are very simplistic. It's simply 2 filler materials, and you just keep sticking A with B and then B with C and C with D and D with A and B with D, and you just eventually a monkey with enough piles is eventually going to get to the end of a Lancero blend. There's no great skill in blending Lanceros, even though we sell it as a sexy thing. There just simply isn't. So that's where the blending is, mostly primarily in Toros. Now, the difficult question, that because I talked so long about that one, I can't remember. What was the difficult question?
Cigars using pipe tobacco.
The pipe tobacco question. Okay. So I started smoking cigars and enlisted in the Navy when I was 17. I was enlisted during the Reagan years. We were grossly underpaid back then. I mean, like literally, Sydney and I, we had 2 babies. We were on welfare checks while I was enlisted in the Navy. That's how broke we were. Okay, that's how bad it was. I could not afford to smoke very many cigars. They were way out of my price point. So pipe tobacco, even high-end pipe tobacco today, a 50-gram tin you can get for about 18 American dollars of like the really tippy-top stuff. And out of a 50-gram tin, you can, figuring 3 grams per pipe, somebody that's better at math than me is going to tell me that's probably somewhere like around what? Like 18 times you get to smoke out of that 50-gram tin for $18. So even today, you get to smoke a bowl full of the best tobacco for about $1 a smoke is about where it works out to, right? And pipe tobaccos are actually way more interesting than cigar tobaccos. All cigar tobaccos are air cured, black negra seed tobaccos. It's a certain category where the pipe guys, They got all the different Virginias, the reds and the brights, and how they ferment it and how they cure it. And, you know, the Turkishes and the Orientals and the Latakias and the Periques. They have just dozens upon dozens of just unique ingredients. So you can actually find a lot of really interesting stuff to smoke in a pipe. The problem is smoking a pipe is a pain in the ass. It's really complex because the moisture of the tobacco makes a difference, but that moisture is not the same. It depends on the tobacco. So certain tobaccos you want drier and other tobaccos you want wetter. So you need to figure that out. The shape of the bowl makes a difference. So you got to figure that out. And the shape of the bowl makes a difference depending on the tobacco you're putting in the bowl. The depth of the bowl and the width of the chamber makes a difference. The drill hole size makes a difference. How you pack the tobacco in the pipe makes a difference. Some have to be packed a certain way. Others need to be packed another way. Yeah, there's some basic general rule of thumbs, but none of them are actually right for everything. So what it requires you as a pipe smoker is to go through this tremendous learning curve that's really done by trial and error, okay, in order to become good at smoking a pipe. And the thing is, most people never get there because what ends up happening is they try, but their pipe goes out on them every 30 to 60 seconds. They literally have to light it 30 times to try to smoke through one bowl of whatever. And then they get this really severe tongue bite that it actually becomes physically painful to try to smoke the pipe. So the whole pipe smoking experience for most consumers is miserable in the beginning. It's only the people that stick with it, okay, and are willing to go through hundreds of bad experiences to slowly get better at it, to the point where now I can light a pipe and not ever have to relight it again. And I can smoke it 45, 50 minutes without relighting it or thinking about it, right? But that's not true with all pipe tobaccos. There's some that I still struggle with, but very few people ever get there. So when I started going to Central America, I used to take some of my favorite pipe tobaccos with me, and I would have them add them to cigars. And I would just smoke them myself because I enjoyed the pipe tobacco. But even as adept as I become with a pipe, it's still not as convenient as smoking a cigar, right?
No.
You still got the pipe, you got the tamper, you got the special lighter, you got the pipe cleaner, you got the pouch. I mean, it's a lot of shit to move around. And it's not easy to do while you're driving your car, okay? And the other thing too is you look a little nudgy when you smoke a pipe, okay? And when you look like me, some big biker dude, and I got the whole Sherlock Holmes thing going, it's not exactly the coolest thing in the world, right? So for 30 odd years, I've been doing my pipe smoking behind closed doors in secret. The world has not known that I was a big pipe smoker until literally this last summer when I made the announcement of this brand. But for the last 20 plus years, I've been adding pipe tobacco to cigars for me to smoke. And I ended up becoming friends with the head pipe tobacco blender at Cornell and Deal. And it turns out his name's Jeremy Reeves. And he reached out to me to tell me how much he loved my cigars. And I reached back out to him to say, wait a minute, you're Jeremy Reeves. I love your Pirate's Cake. And, you know, I just listed off like 20 things that I smoke on the regular that are pipe blends that he makes. And I told him about the fact that I have been for years throwing some of his pipe tobacco in some of my cigars just for me to smoke. He said, send me some. So I sent him some. He's like, this is really different. This is really unique. I said, yeah, it's kind of cool, isn't it? And then we just got in a conversation about, hey, someday we should do something together. Well, yada, yada, yada. He's busy, I'm busy, but COVID year happens. I can't go to Nicaragua. So, but I can go to South Carolina, and that's where the pipe tobacco factory is. So I go to South Carolina and I spend some time with Jeremy in his pipe factory. And we ended up coming up with some pipe blends. I made a lot of blends myself with the intention of putting him in a cigar, but in the end, everything I made, he made better. So there's definitely a skill to it. You know what I mean? I was making stuff that I thought was really good, and he would take it and he would make it better every single time. And I'm like, okay, guess what?
I gather this is all still well.
Right. You make the pipe stuff, and then I'll figure out how to make it into a cigar. And that's kind of the way we ended up approaching it. He did all the work on the pipe tobaccos within certain guidelines. I knew what I wanted. I had ultimate say on whether it was going to be used or not used, but the reality is he was just better at his job than I was at his job, which thank God, that should be true. And I then ended up building 4 separate cigars based around 4 pipe tobacco blends. So Stillwell Star is going to be the very first luxury pipe tobacco cigar on the marketplace. No one's ever done one before. Now, there are plenty of pipe tobacco cigars that have been sold, but most of them are syrupy sweet, and they use all the super cheapest of the pipe tobaccos. Because look, really expensive pipe tobacco is expensive. I mean, we're talking about, if we're talking about 3 grams, it adds up really quick compared to cigar tobaccos. I believe that there's a consumer base out there that's willing to pay for the experience. What I don't know is I don't know what they're going to think of the experience, because it's very different. It's not a replacement for a pipe. It's more like a cigar with the essence of a pipe. Okay. I tried to not knock anybody's head over with it. I tried to take a very balanced, depth approach, because that's what I like. So I did what I like in these 2. But what I am hoping is I'm hoping for the pipe guy that smokes pipe tobaccos, that when he smokes one of these cigars, he'll go, oh yeah, that is an English. Oh yeah, that is a Navy blend. Oh yeah, I see how I call it Bayou, but essentially it's a vapor blend, but vapor blends only mean something to pipe guys. Vapor has a negative connotation in cigars, so I called it Bayou. But I'm hoping that the guy that smokes vapors, when he smokes a Bayou, will say, yeah, you know what? I am getting that kind of bright, citrusy, Virginia that I expect. And I expect it to give me that umami kind of sensation that I get out of the Perique. I'm hoping the pipe guys will be able to sense what they're supposed to be. And I'm hoping the cigar guys will go, wow, this is different and unique. It's an experience I've never had before, and it doesn't suck. Now, whether that'll be the case or not, I guess I'm going to learn in about 2 years, because look, they're going to sell like crazy in the beginning. We all know that, right? I mean, I got the orders to show how excited the retailers feel like this is going to do. But in the end, it's going to be up to consumers. And I'll also be very curious to see, look, we know that because these 4 are so distinctly different, we know that one is going to be the most popular, one's going to be the least popular. I'm really curious to see which is going to be the most popular and which is going to be the least popular. Now, conventional wisdom tells me that the aromatic, which is the one that has the case tobacco, that has that kind of red velvet cupcake buttercream frosting aroma coming off of it with the sweet tip, is going to be the one that's the most successful. But it may not, because I did it my way. I like aromatic pipe tobaccos, but they're my least favorite category of pipe tobacco. So all the aromatics that I smoke are softer, gentler, easier aromatics. Like, I really like the Two Friends English chocolate that's made by Pease and Cornell and Deal together. You know what I mean? It's an English blend with just a touch of chocolate added to it. I always liked Best of Show from McKellen's. Again, a very soft, subtle approach. So my aromatic number 1, it may not be sweet enough or syrupy enough or chocolatey enough or vanilla-y enough or whatever you want to call it for the people that really like a Deadwood Sweet Jane. It is not going to give you a Deadwood Sweet Jane experience. It's going to give you something that's in between that and a more traditional cigar. So conventional wisdom tells me that's going to be the winner, but then maybe it won't, because it isn't enough of that stuff that those consumers crave.
When we'll have an opportunity to buy one of these?
When will you have an opportunity? So in the US, those cigars are going to start landing at our retail. We have a launch party on November 5th with Cornell and Deal, and then they're going to start landing for my US consumers in end of November, early December. I don't even know whether Hoya is taking international orders on them. So I don't even know if they're going to be available internationally at all. I think right now, I think I've given them so much work, I don't know how much of it they can siphon off for the international market. I really don't. I mean, the goal is to, my goal is never to limit anything. So if it's possible that we can do it to ship it internationally, we'll ship it internationally. The problem is it's a $15 retail cigar in the United States, which then makes it what, a $60 cigar in Australia, a $70 cigar in Norway, a $38 cigar in Italy or Switzerland. I mean, the prices just get so dumb once it leaves this channel.
Very quickly, I just wanted to pay you a compliment. I took 5 years off the cigars, mostly because of financial reasons. And when I came back to it recently, I went to the humidor and said, what I miss. And between what you're doing and between what Nick's doing at Foundation, I've got new favorites across the board. I think that it's really creative and they're wonderful. And unfortunately, I spend much too much money on them, but I've got quite a cash.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's tough. You know, that's another thing too, why I'm not a big fan about international, because like in the past, you go to these international accounts and everybody in the room's a swell. I mean, look, cigars cost so much in the international market. You can be an American, you can spend $20 a day and you can smoke 3 decent cigars. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You can be a truck driver, you can be a garbage man, you can be anything, right? Problem is, when you're in Europe, you genuinely have to be really rich in order to smoke cigars. I mean, it totally changes the whole dynamic of who you're interrelating with. Now, I've started to see through social media that's been changing a bit over the last 4 or 5 years, which is nice. But man, I used to really dread going to those international events and knowing that I was basically going to be hanging out with a bunch of really uptight rich people for the next 3 hours, you know. But that slowly seems to be changing. But just the way the price structures are internationally, it excludes so many people. It's the reason why dry cured cigars became so popular, because of the way so many countries do their taxes based on the weight. Those were the cigars that consumers could afford, was the dry cured. They couldn't afford the wet style cigars because the taxes just drove them up into stupid level. If you live in the UK and you want to smoke 3 good cigars a day, you're $100 a day guy. That's where you're at.
That's insane. Well, for me, it is anyway. It's also, I guess, when they get up to that, price level, how many people are willing to take a risk on something that is that expensive. I mean, $30 is a lot for me here for a single stick, but I really want to know that it's going to be better than everything else that I'm getting at 15.
Right. And the thing is, and look, this is exactly what these governments want. Essentially, they're going to eventually just price us all out of being able to smoke tobacco, and therefore, ultimately, we effectively have a ban because the price alone creates the ban. And for the people that are at the upper echelon, at the tippy top, what do they care? They can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So the people making the rules are making rules that don't impact them. They're making rules that impact all of us. And I think that's something that we as a people, regardless of country, of all really coming to the realization of, is that we really are kind of in this kind of let them eat cake scenario in a lot of countries right now. And I hope we don't take it, but I'm afraid we will. I'm afraid we will. And look, I'm guilty of it. I'm kind of in this attitude now. You know what? Fuck it. This is what they want to do. I'm going to be dead in 20 years, and this is going to be their problem. They're going to left with it. And if the world sucks, and so be it. It's just, you kind of get tired of yelling into the wind sometimes. I do. I hate the fact that someone in Norway has to spend $80 to smoke a sin compromiso, when honestly, my money on a sin compromiso is about $1. It's about what I'm making.
Can I buy
$1 and a
all
quarter.
of them at that price, please?
Huh?
Can I buy several cases at that price, please?
Yeah, well, I mean, it costs me more, but I'm saying my profit on top. I mean, the fair price is, the American prices are the fairest prices.
Okay.
But I don't think, but that depends on what state you buy them in.
Yeah. New Jersey in that case.
I mean,
Thank you very much for taking my questions. Really appreciate it, Steve. And I'll let somebody else take over. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate the support.
Cheers.
Let's jump right over to Brian in Los Angeles.
Hello. Okay,
And
I'm
you,
gonna try.
you
and
were
be-
patient,
I'm gonna try
brother.
Quick. Thanks, Reinhardt. So yeah, Europeans, all when the pipe smoke cigars come out, I'll buy some. I'm gonna send you some so you can enjoy it. That's gonna be the best way to go. First, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate this call, and I appreciate your authenticity. We get a lot. I've been on the calls, and we have these brash American guests, and it's the difference is there's no affect with you. It's not for show. You're not doing it like it's a.
I really am just a brash, obnoxious American. Yes, it's a genuine.
But it's who you are. I mean, it's all truths. Everything you say is like you mean it, and there's some depth behind it, and it's your truth, and it's brilliant. It's not just nonsense. It's not just for show. It's great, and you're hilarious. I don't know why people are laughing more. So my wife's a stand-up comic, and she's like, this guy should do comedy. So if the whole generational thing doesn't work out for you, there's another career path coming up. If it's also a nice form of therapy, if you want to save the $2,000 a week that you're considering.
So I'll tell you a stupid little project I'm working on right now. I say so much stupid shit every day. Some of it's smart and some of it's just beyond stupid. That I've started making little voice memos to myself. I'm actually gonna publish a book called The Word of Saka. It'll be 100 pages of these stupid, idiotic things that I have said over the years.
My favorite one today.
Yeah.
I've got quotes.
Oh my God, we got quotes.
I've got
You're
quotes
hilarious.
to live by. I like one son better than the other one.
Depending on my mood.
A monkey.
Depending on my mood, yeah.
A monkey could blend a Lancero, and I want Davidoff money. Those are the quotes of the day.
There's more though.
Yeah.
So thank you, and I'm going to try to agree with a couple things real quick.
Yeah.
The sweetness of the you were talking about Drew Estate and the wrong direction in terms of I got a little bit turned off. I accidentally ordered a La Rutan, and I didn't know what it was, and it was sweet and disgusting to me. It was not my thing, so I agree with you on that. I also liked what you were saying about boutique cigars and what does that even mean. To me, it's the equivalent of an indie film. What is that? Who gets to decide what that name even means? I agree with those. And then just a couple of quick questions. One is, what is your favorite Fast and Furious film? And then my comedian wife wanted to ask I'm trying to come up with questions you've never heard. If you were a cigar, which one would you be? And the last one is, I'm curious in terms of being a person who says what they mean and you're out there, how do you feel about, the cancel culture and the PC police and the internet and young people trying to attack and find little nuanced things that you would say one day that could destroy you in your career and all that stuff? Any thoughts on
The Fast and Furious one's easy because I never saw anything beyond Fast and Furious #2. So for me, #2 was my favorite. So I never, that's the last one I saw. So I'm not big on sequels. I kind of feel like I'm very rare do I ever go back and rewatch a movie. So the whole concept of there being endless sequels really kind of bother me. I feel so ripped off by Star Wars, the 7th one, because it was really just a retelling of the story from the first one with different characters and better graphics. So Fast and Furious is easy. It was the second one. If I were a cigar, that's the Barbara Walters, if you were a tree, right? Yeah. I mean, the obvious answer is to pick something that's shaped like me, which would be what, a 6 by 120, right? That would be about the proportions. But honestly, the cigar that it would be is the same cigar that I've been smoking for. So I'm like everybody. I go through my phases, right? I go my phases where I want something more delicate and mild. Look, I went through a Cuban only phase. There was about 7 years that probably 90% of every cigar I smoked was Habanos. I mean, now in an average week, I smoke maybe 1 or 2 Habanos. Okay, so still in my rotation, but they get very little love from me at this point. But there was a point where they were. The only cigar that I have consistently smoked for 3 decades is a Connecticut broadleaf cigar that's medium to full, has a bit of spice and pepper to it, but not to the point that it's biting me, that tends towards those more earthy, chocolatey, kind of coffee style of flavors, is really wind resistant, and is a little bit rough around the edges. Not to the point that it's harsh or biting, but where it's just a little bit uncouth. And that really is what Mi Querida is in my current portfolio, which really was what Liga Privada was in the Drew Estate portfolio, which really was the cigars that a gentleman named Frank Yanesa out of the Villazon factory in Honduras used to make under El Rey del Mundo and Punch and Hoy de Monterrey before General bought them out. So although all three of those different products, the blend is not identical between any of them, those three, nor is how the materials are worked the same between any of those three. That genre has been the consistent thing that I always find myself returning to. If you asked me today, I could only keep one cigar, it would be the Mi Querida Blue Label. Is it my most complex cigar? No. Is it my most expensive cigar? No. Is it my most technical cigar? No. Is it the one that I'm the most proud of? No. But it is the cigar that if I had to pick just one, that's the one that I would go with. And I think that's the cigar that probably best represents who I am as a cigar smoker. And then what was that third question?
Just, social media and the PC police.
So here's the thing. I believe that this is a very, very, very tiny segment of society that is causing these things to happen. And that most people do not feel this way. That most people are not this sensitive. I mean, I talk to hundreds, thousands of people all the time. I mean, I hang out in black cigar lounges all the time. I mean, those motherfuckers are just as racist as anyone I've ever met, right? I mean, it's like, I just think that, it's really such a tiny little segment of people that make so much noise. And I think so much of corporate America and corporations all around are just so fearful of it that they let people control it. I personally, I love it. If someone wants to come at me with that, I want to come back 8 times harder. So I'm waiting for the opportunity to really be canceled or boycotted or whatever, because I will relish that battle, because it'll be just absolute fun. Because in the end, I truly believe that most people are sick of it. And then most people are just waiting for someone to stand up and say, yeah, you know what, screw you. Now, at the same time, I try not to get into topics that I know are problematic, right? I wish I didn't know what Robert De Niro's political beliefs are, because for me, it ruins every movie he's in, right? And I think Robert De Niro is an amazing actor, and I really don't want to be thinking about his politics. Now, if Robert De Niro decides that he wants to run for Senate, then I absolutely want to know about Robert De Niro's politics. So I try to not get into those things because they don't serve a purpose, I think. I want people, when they think of Steve Saka, I don't want them to think of what my political beliefs are. I want them to think about what my cigars are about and whatnot. But at the same time, I don't shy away from them. And I really think that this whole cancel culture thing is way overblown. And I think that if most people just kind of there's 2 things. Yeah, what I said is fucking stupid. I shouldn't have said it. I'm sorry. That's answer number 1. The other answer is you're just being a panty waste about this. Grow up, get real. You got to have something better to worry about, right? Those should be the only 2 responses. There should be no other response. Either, yeah, I fucked up, I'm sorry, or you're being a total pussy. Those are the answers. Live with it. But that's not what happens now. We end up in all of this craziness. And the funny part is, give it a week, give it 10 days. They're going to move on to something else to be upset about. You know what I mean? So if you just shut your mouth, you're probably going to be just fine. Don't even give them the time of day. Don't even worry about it. Don't care. I have often said this. In today's society with social media, the way it operates, Mother Teresa would have haters. If Mother Teresa is going to have haters, what chance do the rest of us have? Right? We don't stand a chance. There isn't a single one on this call or probably within 1,000 miles of me that has as good a heart as Mother Teresa had, right? So if she's going to have haters online and she's going to be canceled for whatever, and she's going to be told she isn't doing enough, then it's a no-win scenario. So why try to win it? Why bother with it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, she shops at ExxonMobil, so, gotta let her go.
And that's the point. It's ExxonMobil today, and it's BP before, and it's this and it's that. Look, I boycott stuff all the time. I just choose where not to spend my money. But I don't make it my mission to go out of my way to tell other people who they should boycott and who spend their money on. Look, there's certain cigar makers. I think they're douchebags. Even if the cigars are good, I'm not willing to buy the cigars because I don't want to make their wallets any fatter. But I don't make it my mission to say who I think is a douchebag and try to convince you not to buy that person's cigar. I think that's something that we all come to an individual decision on. But I do think that the level of people that are that hypersensitive is just so tiny. It really, really is. And it's just because of social media that they just seem so loud. And I think that I really respect somebody like a David. I hope he doesn't back down, but like a David Chappelle that says, it's a fucking joke. Get over it. You know what I mean? Move along. I mean, jokes are they're supposed to challenge the way you think. They're supposed to incite an emotion in you. That's part of what makes it interesting. And it's also, how can we ever have an honest conversation if we have to all be guarded about every single word we all utter out of our mouths? And there's not a single person amongst us that hasn't said something that's incredibly asinine and stupid and rude that you wish you could take back. The difference is now it gets recorded forever and screenshotted, even if you realize 10 seconds later, like, well, that was fucking dumb. Let me delete that. But it's already been screen captured by somebody, right? I mean, I tell you, I feel for these kids. I just know all the stupid ass shit I did from the age of 14 to the age of 24. If there was a video record of that, oh my God. I mean, literally, what a disaster that would be. I mean, isn't part of being 21 being stupid? I mean, isn't that part of what you do when you're 21? I mean, just think about it as yourself. I mean, and I know personally, it was like during like the mid 30s where I started to figure out who I even was. And it really wasn't until about the mid 40s, that I'm like, okay, this is what I believe in. This is why I believe in it. This is why I act the way I act. This is, it literally took, some 25 plus years of adulthood and some real life experience before I had even become what I would consider to be a fully formed person. And look, and even now, I still learn. Like I often call myself a redneck, right? I never thought of the term as having negative connotations other than just being a stupid country white boy. Like the ATV, I like to fish, I like to shoot shit, I like to do that. I never thought about it from a racial point of view. You know what I mean? That the concept of redneck also for certain people, when they hear the term, that instantly is branded as a racist term. I had never thought about it in those terms. It never even had crossed my mind. And, while I'm sitting in a lounge and I'm having a conversation with a bunch of guys, it kind of made me think of, maybe I have to start rethinking about that because I didn't really understand that it was being perceived that way. So it's also, don't intentionally try to pour salt in the wound, but at the same time, I think everyone's getting too hyper crazy, and it's going to swing back. It always does, right? I think it already feels like it's swinging back a little bit, right? It feels as though it is to a degree. I mean,
I think so. Yeah, I think free speech is there and it's important, and I think comedians are on the forefront. And I agree. That's a great answer. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, Brian, and many thanks. Let's jump to Mace in the UK. I think our last question here at the lounge. Brother, thank you.
You know what? First things first, I'm just to say, Steve, really, from a guy who's been smoking Cuban cigars for so long, and I had a recent friend who's on the show tonight, Ray, turned me on to New World. I put that in parentheses, but I genuinely love your cigars. So, and I really appreciate being able to sit here tonight and have a frank conversation with you and listen to your viewpoints on where the industry is going. It's refreshing. It's really exciting, and I really appreciate your time tonight. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Just many.
Before we
thanks
go
for-
off from that, I feel for you guys because now that Habanos is owned by the Chinese investor group, it is going to become so difficult for you to get the Cuban cigars that you've been used to getting. They are going to swallow everything, and it's gonna make the challenge as a Cuban cigar smoker. It's going to be so weird. You're going to find yourself now having to import cigars from Hong Kong to get what you want in the next 5 years. I'm hoping Habanos has a strategy that's going to fix this, because what's been happening is a fake market. They've been exporting to every place else, but 65 to 75% of it was going back to Hong Kong to then be illegally gray marketed into mainland red China. And now what they're doing is they're just cutting out the European and the they're cutting out all the other international retailers and just now delivering them directly into Hong Kong, which is going to make life much harder as a Cuban smoker outside of being in the Chinese market.
What I will say to that is, Steve, is that from my side, I started out smoking Cubans, but I've fallen in love with the New World to the point where Cubans can go where they're going to go, and I've got my collection, I've got my stack. I'm good with that, So it's almost one of those things where you're absolutely right that what's going on now and the trend that's happening, it's going to make it a lot more difficult. But luckily, I've been turned on to some of these smokes that you're producing, that Drew's producing, that everybody else is producing, that I'm absolutely in love with. And it's a different flavor profile. It's a different taste. It's just a different experience. So I'm actually in a good position where fine, Cubans can go where they're going to go. But what I wanted to ask is, you had an interesting point where you were saying about the legislation and about, just being inundated with these changes that are going to kill the industry, and you're seeing yourself working in a dying industry. And I wanted to ask you is, and it's kind of tying into what Jose asked you. He was asking you who were the best over the last 30 years or so. And I wanted to ask you is, where do you see the industry going? But also tying into that, who are the guys coming up? And it's a bit of a weird question to ask you, because it's like, who do you see as making that change? Who do you see as the trendsetters that actually maybe we should, more producers, more manufacturers, more other brands should follow, that, that's where we're going. That's what we should be doing. That's like the first question. I have a few others, but.
So I think ultimately in the end, the big European conglomerates are going to win. I think STG is going to win. I think the Chinese investor group is going to win, who owns Altadis. I think Swisher is going to win. I don't think that there's any space for any small guy to really advance. I think the best thing that you could hope is that maybe they get bought out and they be allowed to operate as an island unto themselves in one of these big environments. But so rarely is that actually what happens. It's always what happens when the purchase occurs. They say they're going to be left alone, but within 3 to 5 years, that's no longer the case. They get just absorbed into the machine. I don't think that I don't think that there's any value in any of the brand owners. I think that the people that have a potential future are the ones that are more at the factory and tobacco level. So I think that, people like Nicholas and myself and Skip Martin, if he could get his head out of his ass and, If James Brown would spend a little more time in his factory and less at the beach, I think that you could. These are the places where you have the greatest potential, because you're actually somehow intimately involved in the creation of the product. Will there be some? I think that young kid out of the Dominican, Henderson Ventura, he's kind of been a behind the scenes guy for Caldwell and for La Barba and whatnot. But look, he's been making the cigars his paying customers want. But I actually think he's a talented young cigar maker that, if he can navigate the business end of things. And honestly, I don't know that he can, because that's really part of the problem in our business is there's tobacco guys, and then there's factory guys, and then there's business strategy guys, and there's marketing guys, and there's sales guys. And these are all really very individual, unique skill sets that all need to work in unison in order for something to be successful. And look, Nicholas, talented tobacco, talented cigar guy. He's learning the business as he goes along, day by day. He never had to worry about the business side of cigars. He never had to worry about the strategic side of cigars. He never had to think about that, because that was handled for him by other people. So he's got to go through that learning curve. Okay. It's so, I think that is where the potential future lies. What I don't know is where the regulatory environment will be, whether they can navigate it. I can tell you, I don't think that had the substantial equivalency actually gone into effect when it was originally supposed to, 2 August, was it not this August, but the previous August? I don't know how many of those guys would have gotten on the other side of it, to be honest with you. They kind of got a little bit of a Hail Mary thanks to the courts, because it's, we look at the way that the FDA just published the finalized rules on substantial equivalency for everything but premium handmade cigars. And if that's the path that we have to go down, then there is no place in the marketplace for small manufacturers. It doesn't exist. In fact, honestly, there's no place in the market for a Padron. There's no place in the market for a La Flor Dominicana or for Ernesto Perez Carrillo. They're not going to be able to comply with that. As much as they're going to try and they're going to want, and they're going to hope and they're pray. But the bottom line is, all of these things are set up for the big, massive companies. It's entirely about, it has nothing to do with consumer health. It has entirely to do with protectionism and them basically squeezing out all competition. And I feel as though that's a battle that we're not going to win. And I wish I was wrong about that. So then what? Does it mean that there's going to be these, now, thankfully, because of the way we all communicate now, could there be a scenario where a guy like, Timbuktu could be selling cigars illegally through his little website for Bitcoin, and those are going to become the cigars? But how are you ever going to find out about that guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How are you going to reach out to him? Look, I look at every day on Facebook and Instagram as my last day. It's only a matter of time till some people sitting in a room somewhere decide tobacco is the same as child pornography, and we're just going to cut it all off. And actually, the term of services now are very clear. If any of you guys ever post a picture of a cigar, you're actually violating the terms of services, even though you're not selling it, even though you're not telling anyone where to buy it. Just everything that we do that can be interpreted as the promotion of tobacco. And that's as simple as posting a picture and saying, hey, I'm enjoying this with a Macallan 12, is actually a violation of the terms. And once that happens, then we're back to the days of how does a little guy like me even get noticed? That's why a magazine like Cigar Aficionado had such power in the 90s, because you had to dance with them, because there was no other way for anyone to even knew you existed if you didn't dance with them. It's one of the reasons why I market with all these other little people. I want I want as many people out there talking about cigars as possible, as many channels. Do I think any of them bring me customers? I don't think they really do. I don't think my ROI is good. But what I do think is I think it's the only possible way that maybe I'll be able to reach an audience once social media clamps down on us.
Thank you very much for that.
I wish I could be more optimistic, but it's this writing has been on the wall for a very long time. And
Thank you very much for that.
it's part of what's causing the division in our industry between the big companies and the little companies, because our business interests are really not aligned anymore. Look, Marlboro wanted all cigarette advertising banned. Why did they want cigarette advertising banned? Because they didn't want there ever to be another American Spirit to come out of nowhere and take 2% market share. Because as far as Marlboro was concerned, that 2% was theirs for Marlboro. That's how Altria felt about it. So they're the ones that lobbied for that. And the same thing, all of this FDA regulation, this was something that was entirely lobbied by Altria, the situation that we're in America currently. I mean, they actively, aggressively lobbied for this for 10 years because they just wanted to stifle competition because they're at the top of the mountain. And the only way to stay at the top of the mountain is to make sure nobody else can even climb the mountain. And that's where we're at. And these big companies, they have the dollars, they have the lobbyists, they have the attorneys. They want the rules complex. They want it difficult. They want the filings to be arduous and painful because, yeah, so what if it costs them a few $100 million to do every year? You know, they're protecting their multi-billion-dollar empire is what they're doing. And basically even my little company, I have spent, not counting my time, but actual dollars out the door in the first 3 years doing the compliance paperwork. I spent over 200K. I mean, it's just, that's crazy. 200,000. I didn't have a single year I made 200K profit in those first 3 years. All the money went to attorneys. That's where it all went. And they know that. And that's just the way it is. So,
well, despite that, and if you were to start anew, either in the cigar industry or in any other industry for that matter, without the mystique, without the reputation of Steve Saka, without the name that you have built for yourself, how would you approach it? And would you even do it again? Especially,
are we talking about any business or cigar business?
So with the cigar business, I guess the question is, would you do it again?
Would I do it again? Well, obviously the answer is yes, because I was stupid enough to do it again. So how can I say I wouldn't? And the other thing too is, and this is where you get into this very weird place. I would never want to discourage someone from doing it because somebody is going to win. I just don't know who's going to win, right? I know I have a better chance of winning than they have a chance of winning. But ultimately, you never know. I mean, Rocky Patel came out of a field of 2,000 other people. You know what I mean? He just survived to the end of the Squid Game is what happened to him. And you don't know who's going to get to that end. And you never know. Because look, during the boom years in the 90s, we had over 2,000 new cigar companies introduced in America. Well, what companies came out on the other side? Rocky Patel came on the other side. Drew Estate came on the other side. Alan Rubin with Alec Bradley came on the other side. But if we start really getting into it, I don't know that we could come up with much more than 7 companies out of that whole group of 2,000 that actually survived. The number is pretty small of the people that actually survive. And even now, I mean, brands are dying all the time and companies are dying all the time, but it's not like you put out a press release that my company is bankrupt and I'm out of business. They just kind of fade away and go to nowhere land, right? And I think one of the things, and I went through this exercise recently with somebody. I said, look, what's one of your favorite top lists? And they said to me, one of their favorite top lists was the one that William Cooper on Cigar Coop publishes. So they picked it. I said, okay. Let's pull up the top list of 2015, 5 years ago. Let's go through these 25 cigars that were on the top list of William Cooper's top list. There's only like 4 or 5 of those brands on that top list there's like one or two that's even relevant. There's like maybe another 3 or 4 that still sell. All the rest are dead. They're gone. I mean, that's just 5 years ago. And that was a top list from the guy that said that this is the top list I respect. It's really, we burn through a lot of products as an industry. We always have. I mean, it's why it's so rare to make that 20-year leap to become an Ashton or to become an Acid or to become a Liga Privada. I mean, that's no little feat. The number of brands that have to die in order for that to happen is literally in the thousands. And the thing is, even you, I'm going to say as you as consumers, but I'm going to say me as in the business. Look, obviously the COVID years are a little weird, right? 2020 and 2021 are a little odd. But most years we have between 300 to 500 new product introductions, either totally new brands or totally new line extensions or something like that. How many of them can you recall off the top of your head from 2020? Can you even name 10? Can you name 10 from 2019? Can you name 10 from 2018? There were 500 plus of them in 2018. I know 545, if I remember the number right. Charlie at Halfway will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the number. I mean, can you name 10? I'm in this business and I can't name 10. So we're in an industry of failure. We're not in an industry of successes. The number of successes are very few and far between. And it really takes about 10 years for you to even know if you have a chance at success. And that's a 10-year grind that's really, really hard. And the thing that happens is when a company gets really buzzy in that 3 to 7 year period, they then find it really hard to transition to where they become a mainstay when they're buzzy, because they end up squandering the buzz. They end up pushing too hard. They put too many products out. Look, it's one of the things that I have a lot of products for such a young company. I really do. Maybe arguably too many. But I try to make a product that has a very distinct consumer in mind. I do not believe that the guy that smokes a Sober Mesa Brulee Toro is the guy that's smoking Mi Querida Tricky Traca 648. Is there some overlap? Yeah, there are some consumers that like variety and they'll smoke across the spectrum, flavor, strength-wise and size-wise. But most consumers, they like a very particular flavor, they like a very particular strength, and they like a very particular wrapper color, and they like a very particular size. And literally almost every cigar they smoke falls into that category. And it's one of the reasons why when I make these new brands and I add things, I'm always thinking about who do I get that I don't currently have? Not saying, hey, how can I capitalize? Sin Compromiso is selling great. So how do I make something that's like Sin Compromiso and more of it? I'm really careful to try to not look. I'm going to cannibalize my geek customers because my geek customers are always going to be playing the field. But how do I not cannibalize my normal customer, which I would make an argument that Pepin Garcia has been doing it for years. I don't know what Pepin Garcia's next cigar is going to be, but I can tell you it's going to be peppery, it's going to be lean, it's going to be racy, it's going to be spicy, because 95% of what Pepin Garcia makes is that style of cigar. So when he launches a new cigar, is he getting a new customer? Or is he just taking one of the customers that smoked one of his previous brands that were very good cigars and moving them to a new, very similar cigar that's a good cigar? So I try to really think about, when I look at something like Stillwell, who am I stealing? When I add Tricky Traca, am I stealing from Sober Mesa? When I, you know what I mean? Do I think that Muestra de Saka cuts into my Umagog consumers? I try to make these, as much as you don't want to put people in boxes, people are in boxes. We just are. We have things we like and we have things we don't like. And most consumers go to the box that they like. So I try to be very particular. So the only thing that I would argue right now that I'm really missing, that I don't have, is I don't have something for the pepper bomb guy. For the guy that really wants his head blown off, that wants that super bite, that super spice, that super pepper, that serious nasal burn, I'm on fire guy. I don't have anything for that guy currently in the portfolio. That's something that I'm missing. So that's, for me, that's a hole that eventually I need to fill. But when it comes to the other stuff, I think I have something in the mix that there's something that would be appealing to almost every consumer somewhere in the
I just
portfolio.
have one last question, Reinhard. Sorry, guys, just one last question, and this is more touching on to what you just mentioned. There is I've read a lot of articles about your, not going to say your dislike, but it is a dislike for the Lancero. And I remember I tried the Now Leave Me the Hell Alone. And I've got to ask the question is, what is, for you on a personal, is it a personal thing where you just don't like the blend? You don't like the effort that goes into it? Or where does that lack of interest in making Lanceros go to? Because it was a great stick. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
And I thought, can we get more of these?
I made 2 Lanceros in my life that have come to market. One of them was the Liga Privada L40, and the other one was the Now to Leave Me the Hell Alone. Those are the only 2 that I've made that have ever come to market. My reason for disliking Lanceros is there's multiple reasons. The first reason is I always feel as though the blends are too simplistic, going back to the limited amount of ingredients and the fact that you can't do any sort of leaf positioning or backfilling to change the way the cigar smokes. So I've never made a Lancero blend that I thought, hey, if I could have made this into a Lonsdale, I could have made this a better smoking, more enjoyable experience. And I would still be in a very elegant format. I could be in that 6 to 7 inches in a 42 to 44 ring gauge. And I actually think the customer would enjoy it more than me trying to squeeze something in a 7x38. So that's my number one reason. I've never made a Lancero that I didn't feel that I couldn't have made better as a Lonsdale. It's my first reason. The second reason I don't like Lanceros is because you always have a problem with a potential hidden problem with tightness. And I really need a cigar to explain this. And I don't have another one that isn't lit. You guys mind if I step off camera a moment and grab a cigar? I'll be right back.
Reinhard, while Steve's taking that step, I think this has been one of the best sessions. So many thanks for tonight.
I've got to thank all of you for staying with us for over 3 hours now. This is absolutely bonkers.
Cigar number two.
Yeah, it's been a great.
I think we're all on number 2. We're all on number 2 right now. So no
Yeah,
complaints,
debating
Reinhard. Keep it going.
I think Steve even stopped counting. I don't know which number of cigars he's gone through now.
Trying to find a damn Lancero in this room. You think with about 5,000 cigars in here I could find one, but yeah. That's proving not to be easy.
He's got too many Toros, no Lanceros.
Or too many Lonsdales, no Lanceros. Yeah.
Crazy. You know, there's some in here somewhere, but all right, screw it. I'm not gonna be able to find a Lancero.
Wish I had 5,000 cigars in my humidor.
And at least it proves your point, Mr. Saka. If you're really trying to find one, you can't even get your hands on one.
No, they're in there. It's such a disaster. It's embarrassing. It looks like a room that's been cared for by a 12-year-old. Just stuff, just jammed. So here's the deal. Lanceros are notoriously tight, right? We all agree on that. We have more draw problems with Lanceros. Everyone assumes that the problem is because they're so skinny, there's not enough room for the tobacco, that ultimately it ends up becoming too tight because they put too much tobacco in it. That's rarely the case because we know what a Lancero is supposed to weigh. So we know how many grams we should get once the product is finished and we put it on the scale. And if there was too much tobacco in it, we would instantly be able to tell by that. The problem with the Lancero is because it's skinny, okay, which just isn't as skinny as it should be. The problem has to do with the bunch. When the Lancero is making a cigar and he bunches it, he then places that cigar in the mold. He bunches another one next to the mold, bunches another one, places in the mold. Typical cigar mold holds 10 cigars, except Lancero molds tend to hold 12 cigars because there's enough space to put 12 slots. So you got 12 Lanceros in the mold. When the cigars are in the mold, halfway through the molding process, we have to rotate the cigars in the mold. Now, the reasons why we have to rotate the cigars in the mold is not to evenly press them in the other direction. What we really need to do is we need to rotate them to get rid of the seam line of the mold. The mold makes a seam line on the cigar. So if we left them in the mold, you would have a very pronounced seam. So halfway through the pressing process, we open every single mold, we take every cigar out and we rotate it 90 degrees and we put it back in the mold. So when the Lancero is doing this, this is time that he isn't spent making cigars. And if he isn't making cigars, it's costing him money. So he does it very quickly. So he pulls a cigar out of the mold, he rotates it, and then he pushes it into the mold, right? Boom. And then he picks up the next one, pushes it into the mold, rotates it 90 degrees, pushes it in the mold, pick it up, rotate 90 degrees, push it in the mold. Here's what happens. When he pushes it into the mold and he does this, his right hand has a tendency to go to the right and his left hand has a tendency to go to the left. Just physiologically, this is what happens as you press down on something. And the problem is because the Lancero was so skinny and so long, it actually torques the bunch a little bit and it causes a twist in the center of the cigar. And it's that twist that's actually causing the draw problem. So when you break apart a Lancero mold, what you need the Lancero to do is to lift the cigar out of the mold. And then when he pushes it back in the mold, to take his fingers and push straight down on top of the cigar like this. So it's getting even pressure. Because if he does this, he's always going to end up causing this torque factor. If he does this, it prevents that from happening. The problem is this is physically uncomfortable to hold your hands in this way. This is what's natural. So while you're looking at Jose and you've told him this is the way you want him to do it, he does this. But as soon as your back is turned, he goes back to this. That's what he ends up going back to. So you always have this potential grenade in the middle of a bunch that causes a twist in a Lancero that there's no way for you to tell on the scale. And I don't like that the risk is always there that somebody's going to get a cigar that's completely unsmokable because Jose was too lazy to do this instead of do that. So that's my second issue with Lanceros. First is I don't feel as though you can make them as interesting as Lawndales. Secondly, you have this inherent problem where you get these twists in the bunch. The third problem is consumers don't buy them. The Lancero guys are loud. They're proud. They scream about them, but they don't buy the damn things. The way the average Lancero smoker is they chase the shape and the format more than the blend or the brand. So the average Lancero smoker will buy every single Lancero ever made. They will buy an entire box. They will smoke 1 or 2 cigars out of it, and then they will put it in their humidor, in their Lancero shrine, and spend the next 10 years talking about what an amazing Lancero that Lancero was. And they go on to buy the next Lancero. Well, this is no good because this isn't the way it normally works. A guy that smokes Toros, he finds 3 or 4 brands he really likes and he buys them on the regular and he buys them on the regular and he repeats, buys them. There's very few Lancero guys that repeat buy Lanceros. They don't. They always just move on to the next Lancero conquest. So there's like no money in Lanceros. So from a commercial point of view, it's almost just a dead end. You know, they're loud, but they don't buy it on the regular. They just simply don't. So the way consumers consume them make them have no commercial value whatsoever, even though the Lancero guys are super loud. And then the fourth one is a very personal issue, which doesn't apply. I just kind of have this general rule of thumb that I don't like to put things in my mouth that make me feel like a gay porn star or make me feel like a pedophile. So it kind of cuts out 2 size categories of cigars that I don't tend to smoke. But that doesn't count as one of the primary reasons because it's not up to me to determine what people want to put in their mouths. But for me, I don't tend to really enjoy smoking super skinny formats, and I don't tend to enjoy smoking really wide formats.
Steve, many, many thanks for that. That is a really in-depth explanation on a level that I personally didn't know, and that I really appreciate you being able to explain to myself and everybody else on the channel. Absolutely, really appreciate that.
I have to
Many
tell
thanks for
you, the now leave me the hell alone. I'm actually surprised at how many of those we still sell. It's actually, honestly, the now leave me the hell alone is probably one of the most successful Lanceros in the last 30 years.
I'll keep
I
buying
mean,
them.
it's crazy that those things still sell to me. And probably the other one is the L40, those two. Because for the most part, they're just not repeat purchase items. They just aren't.
One very brief follow-up question on that. You mentioned that the brands that you, or the SKUs that you introduce, follow a certain strategic pattern. On the other hand, you're such a straight shooter, speak from the heart in the most authentic way, and literally give a shit about other people's opinion. Do you honestly want or consider making blends, making products, SKUs, brands, solely because you know there's demand for them and the market wants them, even though you do not like them personally?
No, I don't have to. That's the beauty of it. I can make enough stuff that I like and feel comfortable with, and there's a big enough market for me to sell those in that I don't have to worry about that. I mean, look, I'd like the company to get to a certain size, because, so like when it comes to sales and sales numbers, the only reason why I care about what we're selling is because of what I'm spending. So in other words, I'm looking at how much we're selling and I'm like, is it covering all the money I want to spend to start this new thing at a farm, or start this new product, or buy that tobacco, or do this really cool thing that I've never done before? So for me, that's actually the way I look at the sales more than any. Look, I want everyone to get a paycheck. I want everyone to get a bonus. I want there to be profit. But really, for me, sales are more about fueling my desire to actually spend more money. And I think the company will be healthiest when we get it to be probably somewhere between 3 to 4 times larger than it is now. That'll even give me more ability to gamble. Because I mean, look, we do a lot of gambly things. The Sin Compromiso crop is a small independent guy. That's a really risky thing to do. The current hybridized Connecticut broadleaf crop that we're working on in Nicaragua, really risky thing to do. The Angelica tobacco, I mean, I commissioned that farmer to grow that tobacco. That's a super risky thing to do. And I'd like to be able to do more of those risky, fun things. So for me, I'd like the company to get a little bit bigger. So it gave me a little bit more cushion that it isn't quite as risky. I mean, look, this Stillwell Star thing, it's really kind of a very risky idea. I mean, it could totally backfire on me. People, this could be my jump the shark moment, right? I mean, it is such a unique, different product. It's so out there that this could actually slow my momentum completely up by having this Stillwell Star concept out there in the marketplace. I mean, Saka's now making flavored cigars. Saka's doing this. Saka's doing that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a risky proposition to do something like that. It's also one of the reasons why I tend to keep things in their own individual brand buckets. I'm hoping that if Stillwell Star is an utter colossal failure, that the guys that smoke Mi Queridas and Sober Mesas don't even notice it being an utter colossal failure. I mean, look, the geek crowd is going to know. The guys that sit here and listen for 2 hours in a Zoom channel, they're going to all know. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, I need the company to be, I want the company to be larger to give me some more flexibility to do some more cool and fun things. That's ultimately what I want it to be. But I don't want it to come to the point where I'm forced to have to make something. You know, I don't want to get to the point where the tail starts to wag the dog. I don't have those aspirations. And look, part of what makes it easier is, and you know, and I just had this, we just changed accountants, right? I've been looking for a really good accountant for a long time, someone that understands small business, you know, And I finally found one. And of course, one of her first questions is, you know, what's your succession plan? And I'm like, I don't have one. There is no succession plan. And she's like, well, you're 56 years old. And well, she didn't say it. I'm fat. Yes. And I'm like, she's like, you really need to have one. I said, but why? You know, what I'm not thinking in those terms at all at this point. Because I don't know that, knowing how I think of the industry and thinking about where we're heading, I don't think I'd want to saddle any of my children with that. You know, I think I would basically be putting an anchor around their necks, you know, knowing the current environment that we're operating under. So what does that mean? It means Dunbarton goes as long as it can go until I can't do it anymore, or it means until I'm bought, right? Well, I'm really not all that enthusiastic about being bought, because if I get bought, then that now means I now have a boss again. And look, I mean, I don't know if I want a boss. Boss is a really hard thing to swallow at this stage of my life, you know, so I can't even, but at the same time, I can't say I'll never sell, because I'm old enough to know never say never, because you don't know what's around the corner. And if somebody offers you a stupid number and I have to be slave labor for 3 years to make that happen, I have to think about what's best for my family too, right? You know, because I have grandchildren. I have, you know, it pays for their college. It makes their lives all better. So I have to be realistic about it. But right now, my current goal is to keep my head above water. I'd like to get out of a backorder situation, because I hate being in a backorder situation. I'd like to get some sort of sense as to what the true market, because like, I still have no idea how many Sober Mesa Brulee the market wants. I have never, since we launched the brand 3 years ago, have ever fulfilled the orders on Sober Mesa Brulee. I kind of like to know what is that number. I know what the number is on Sober Mesa. Sober Mesa is growing, but I'm in control of Sober Mesa. Mi Querida is growing, but I'm in control of Mi Querida. Sin Compromiso growing, but I'm in control of Sin Compromiso. I have no control over Brulee at this point. Brulee has just been a runaway train from the moment it hit the shelves, and it hasn't slowed at all. All it does is just keep selling more and more and more and more. I kind of like to figure out where that number is, but at the same time, I'm not going to quadruple production, you know, because it'll totally kill it. I can't make the same quality and consistency. So I just constantly keep edging it up as we can. It just seems the more I make, the more they get smoked, which is a great thing. I'm not complaining about it, but I'd like to figure out where that number is. And I think 2020 and 2021 ended up being a really weird year, where I had way too many limited production cigars all in the same block of time. And that was not intended. What was intended was half of what you're seeing now was supposed to be 2020 stuff. And half of what you're seeing now was supposed to be spread out over 2021. But what's happened is all the 2020 stuff didn't happen, because I wouldn't let the factories just make them without me being physically there for the start of production. Because as I told you, the first 2 weeks are the worst in any cigar. So that's when I need to be there when they start to make U-boat. I need to be there when they start to make U-boat, to not let that first week of production suck. So everything got stacked up, and now I have so many limiteds. It's crazy. I actually talked to one of the retailers into delaying theirs until spring. It's been sitting in my warehouse now for 6 months, because I'm like, it's just such a crowded marketplace. But how does JR 50th to not sell the JR 50th in their 50th anniversary, right? How does Al Shop 75th not get sold at their anniversary party, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so there's some I can't move, and there's other I can move. But I think for all practical purposes, Stillwell is going to be a 2022 brand if it starts shipping at the end of November, early December. And I also have to wonder how many retailers are going to tell me they can't take it, that ordered it, because they're coming into their low cash flow months. You know, when they placed their order back in July, they weren't expecting to wait till December to get the damn thing, you know? And so what just happened? It got really dark, didn't it? Yeah. I think, hold on a second. Weird. So I think that 2021 for me is going to be more of a catch-up year and a less innovative year. That's what I'm imagining. I'm hoping is the case. And I think that I just burned out my little, oh, there we go. See if it stays on. It probably won't.
In almost 2 years with Light 'em Up, I managed to have one complete blackout in almost the entire block of my city. But you know, these things happen.
Yeah, I just so I think I'm going to try to take it a little bit lighter in 2021 and try to solve some of these because it's a nightmare for my office dealing with back orders. They're terrible because it means we don't just. It'd be so much easier to a retailer place an order a day. We charge them, we pick back the box, and we ship it tomorrow. Now, every time we get cigars in, we got to go through all the old back orders. We got to figure out how much everyone ordered. We got to figure out how old those back orders are, how to carve it up, how much to send to this person, how much to send to that person. We eat up so much time just trying to evenly distribute the back orders to be as fair as we possibly can to our customers that it just really like, she's like, most companies make outbound sales calls. Hey, Mr. Retailer, how are you doing? I've noticed that you haven't only ordered any Sober Mesa since such and such. Is there anything that I can do to help you along? We have not made a single outbound call since April of last year. Now, I'm sure there have been a few here and there. I mean, there must be. I'll give this up. I got to turn on a different light. But I mean, I don't like that. There's so many customers that are customers that we're not touching because we're just constantly scrambling to take care of existing orders. And of course, and I'm making the situation worse because here I am adding more cigars. So
fair enough.
You know, I just think, yeah. So I think 2021 is going to be a much more boring year for me. But I have some little quirky little projects that I've been working on this year that I think will be enough to give a little bit of, no offense to red meat lovers, but a little bit of red meat to my guys that are looking for something. Hopefully, we'll see.
Mr. Saka, I cannot thank you enough for everything that you have presented us with and the time that you presented us with and shared with us. I hope that today's session was, in your own words, mildly entertaining for you as well, and that we could offer a few interesting twists and questions here and there.
I obviously love to hear myself talk, so I have to be just enthralled, right?
Before we wrap things up, and again, I would love to thank everybody who joined us for today's epic session. There's one final thing that I would like to ask you, sort of a curveball, and all the way back to where we started. Looking at your career path, Cigar Nexus, that was way ahead of its time. Your time with Lou Rothman and JR, where you worked as a consultant, as an external one.
Right.
Your time with Drew Estate, with the company in its stage back then, and what you built it into, what you achieved with it, and now your own endeavor where you ventured out on your own. What do you think is the most important contribution that you have made to the cigar industry throughout your career?
I think the most important contribution I make is I think I've done a better job of educating consumers than anybody else. I think that over the years, not intentionally, not with purpose, but I think that I've made fellow cigar smokers a lot better educated about what they smoke. And a lot of times they don't even know that it's me, because I will have written something back in, I mean, I see stuff that I wrote back in the 90s that is still parroted today in magazines. And they don't even know that originally came from something I wrote back 20 years ago. And I'm not looking for credit or claim to it, because look, I'm not the I'm not the owner of the information. What I am is I am somebody that had the ability to travel to all of these places. And early on, I got access just because there were no white guys even interested. Okay. And then I got tremendous access when I worked for Lou Rothman at JR Cigar, because JR was like the largest customer for almost every manufacturer in America at the time. So that gave me tremendous access. And I think I've always been able to, I'm good at distilling information and trying to put it in more basic human terms. And I'm also able to try to not make it look, I love the romance of cigars. I love the passion part of cigars. I do. I mean, it's part of what's entranced me to keep doing this all of these years, but also not be beguiled by it, and also be a little bit more sincere and honest and forthright with the consumers. And I think the fact that I have the way, there are a lot of people that know a lot more than me, but they don't have the ability to communicate it, nor do they have the audience to communicate it to. And I think that that's probably, of all the things that I have accomplished, have probably been the greatest. The only thing is, the only way to cement that legacy is to take the time to actually publish a book. But nobody reads books anymore. I don't read books anymore. And I don't know that, I've actually written a book. I've written about 18 chapters of it. And every time I go back and I look at it, I see all the problems with it and all the mistakes and all the things that I don't even know how you finish the project. I think I'm just too OCD, too perfectionist, too whatever, that's going to make it an impossible task. But I think of all the things, I think that's my greatest contribution, because I think there's a lot of things that today that are accepted as fact that just weren't. And a lot of it stems from a lot of the things that I've said over the years. I mean, and just little minor things like everybody calls it San Andres Negro, right? Nobody ever called that tobacco San Andres Negro. Everyone just called it Mexican. Years and years and years and years. I was the first one. I mean, nobody ever heard about stock cutting before I started talking about stock cutting. No one had a clue, right? Nobody knew what mulling was until just recently. I started talking about mulling. Okay, that Connecticut shade isn't done in Palone, it's done in a mull. I mean, there's hundreds of articles that have been written, but they never mention it. They leave those details out, you know what I mean? And they don't even know about it. So I think the more I talk and I share what I've learned, and it is what I've learned, because everything I know is at the benefit of somebody else telling me, and then my own experiences of taking what they told me and trying to do it and fucking something up and then figuring out how to make it different, is really the byproduct of that. But that, I think for me, that's probably my biggest contribution, not the cigars, not the brands, not the hundreds of millions of dollars that I've made other companies. I think it's just making my fellow smokers better, more educated, more discerning, more intelligent about what they smoke and why they smoke it. And so I'd like to think that's my contribution.
Brilliant. And what a wonderful way, and probably the best way to end such a beautiful show, because in exactly that spirit, we all come together here and share these sessions and share the knowledge. Steve Saka, many, many thanks for everything that you shared with us today.
Oh, one more thing. I really do make great fucking tasting cigars. This is amazing. Go ahead.
Amen. That's a mic drop right there. What a pleasure it has been.
Oh, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Many thanks. All the very best to you, and hopefully our paths will meet again super soon. Steve Saka, thank you so much, and we're out. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Beautiful. Good night, Steve.
Good night.